Hey, you know that guy who just before the green flag keys up his mic and asks, "Anybody got a setup?" Well, this is him. This is Adam, and hey, Adam needs some help. On the other hand, this guy over here, this is Steve. Steve is a solid racer and he knows his way around the garage. Steve's problem is time. With a job and a family, he can't find enough time to build competitive setups and to race as often as he likes. But as luck would have it, Steve knows a secret. He lets the Majors Garage crew chiefs do the setup work so he can focus on the racing. At majorsgarage.com, Steve can get setups for over 60 cars on the iRacing service. So no matter what series he wants to jump into, he is covered. Somebody, anybody, really should tell Adam. See you at the garage.
Well, it is Sunday and it is a major series Sunday. What a major day we have here for you today in one of the major racetracks in land down under, perhaps the biggest one. Welcome to Mount Panorama, welcome to Bathurst, and welcome to the Bathurst 500. It's gonna be an absolutely amazing race. I can't wait for it. These drivers have to tackle this track in nothing else but the supercars. One of the gnarliest types of vehicle you can find in the world of motorsport in one of the most dangerous and demanding tracks. So it's going to be a real challenge, but before that, without further ado, let's head to the GSRC track guide to find out just what we're talking about here.
Welcome to Mount Panorama Circuit. Most drivers simply refer to this place as Bathurst, with it being located just to the southwest of the city's major hub. But most ominously, and perhaps appropriately, it's been nicknamed the Mountain. With more than 500 feet of elevation change over the course of a lap, it's easy to understand why. Though originally built for racing, it's become a street circuit over time, with the track itself used for regular traffic and featuring residential housing all along the roads. This makes this 4-mile, 23-turn course incredibly unique in the world of racing. In the past, the track has hosted a variety of types of cars, including open-wheelers. But modern safety standards means that most competitive racing has now been limited to sports cars and touring cars. However, the dangers are very real due to the incredibly high speeds and lack of runoff throughout much of the circuit. The quickest parts are the run up the mountain straight towards Griffin's Bend, and then the flat-out blast back down the Conrad Straight and into the chase. This chicane was added in the late 80s to break up the run down to Murray's Corner. But while most chicanes are derided for ruining the character of a track, the terrifying speed as you approach it and the general difficulty make it fit right in with Bathurst challenges. However, the toughest portions are undoubtedly along the mountain itself, with notorious corners like the Cutting, Brock's Skyline, the Dipper, and Forest's Elbow. In fact, one of the more unique worries of this course is that all of these parts are so narrow that track blockages due to wrecks are not uncommon in the first few laps. The Australian fans often line the fences and hillsides to witness the daredevil spectacle of drivers trying to claim King of the Mountain. You can't blame them with how rare of a sight a track like Bathurst is today.
Well, that's Mount Panorama, the circuit we are today. I am Ossian Puhakka. Joining me in the commentary booth is Sagar Bakshi. Behind the scenes, doing the work of 5 men, is Daniel Costello, and he's using cameras provided by Dougie Beard. So, Sagar, it's Mount Panorama, and 23 corners. You can see the track map on screen, 6.2 kilometers, or more familiar to you, 3.86 miles.
3.86 miles sounds about right to me. It was founded in 1938. It's been unchanged since 87. We are of course located in Bathurst, Australia, with 23 corners, 14 to the left, 9 to the right, and 174 meters or 571 eagles long elevation change. The Conrad Straight is, of course, 1.1 miles or 1.9 kilometers long, and the event programs are so great here. The Bathurst 1000, the Bathurst 12 hours for international GT cars, the 6 hours production car enduro, the Challenge Bathurst, and so many more.
Yeah, and some of the corner names just ring a bell in the minds of motor racers all around the world. Of course, Skyline, and you come from the Skyline into the Dipper, and that's just one of those things you have to kind of do a folks Australian accent into Skyline into Dipper, just because you heard it so many times. And of course, you come from Forest's Elbow down through that Conrod Straight, as you mentioned, into the chase. Very, very fast braking, so on a fast right-hander into one of the best overtaking opportunities on track, perhaps the best, unless you count the uphill into Griffin's Bend, of course. It's just, if you haven't seen a race in Bathurst before, you are in for an absolute treat. I tell you that one. Also, turn number 1, you might notice the name, Hell Corner. That was named by the motorbike riders way back in the day, and the track hasn't seen really that much of a change over the years, but let's look at some race details 10 for you guys. Standings first, I apologize. So we got Trevor Wawrowski, who has pretty much clinched the championship. It's gonna need a great effort from Garen Batten to catch up to Trevor right now, but it's still a challenging race, so anything can, and usually does, happen. Daniel Thomas rounding out the top 3 with Jesper Eriksson in 4th place and Edward Shelley in 5th. You got Oscar Fredriksson in 6th and David Baker 7th. Jeff Schmeier in 8th position, Wayne Hutchinson 9th, and Daniel Holmer rounding out the top 10 here. And I believe, Sagar, you got the team standings for us.
For the European team standings, in first place, it'll be the Fusion Gold Euro with 5,362 points. Dog Bear in second, not too far behind by 133. Then Fusion Silver Endurance Team. Euro, in third place. The Sim Race Sweden Esports team in 4th, JT Dynamics in 5th. Baby Metal, definitely not a cult racing, in 6th place, with LDL Racing in 7th. UDocs Daisy in 8th, Connection Lost Racing in 9th, Infusion Bronze Euro in 10th.
That is indeed the standings, and of course this is the European time slot race in majors. They got 3 ones in total. It's round number 11. Here are your race details. We're racing for 500 kilometers, 81 laps, or approximately 897 football fields. It's Gen 3 supercars. They're no longer called V8 supercars, but they are supercars nonetheless. You get a drive-through at 24 incidents and an additional drive-through at every 8 incidents. So don't take those off tracks too much, and definitely don't collide with another car. You got 1 spare car, and I am making a prediction right now. A lot of people could probably use that spare car, knowing the walls are concrete around here and they don't really take prisoners.
No, the walls are going to claim lives here at Mount Panorama today, and that's for sure. It's not an if, but a when does that incident take place, coming up the mountain or plummeting down the hill. We're still in the practice session right now, so the drivers are pushing to see what the race pace could potentially be. We have a minute left of this practice session, and then we'll head right over into qualifying. But 81 laps going up and down the mountain. This is going to be very interesting, and especially driving these amazing supercars.
Yeah, they are just machines, unlike many things else. So you can also see why the crossover from these supercars into, for example, NASCAR on road courses is easier than you'd think, because these are also big, heavy machines. They are more road orientated. They're not twisted to one side in a way, but they are still heavy cars, and for a lot of European drivers they're a very different experience compared to light and nimble open wheelers or GD cars that we're more used to in this corner of the world. Just watching John Lang from United Kingdom there piloting his Chevy in those classic British racing colors. You got British racing green and you got some yellow there as well for a moment before we change sessions and move on. Then just a quick practice, and then I do believe we are in for a fantastic race.
Absolutely true. You're talking about the weight of the cars. We're down to 1335 kilograms, down from the Gen 2 cars, which were at 1400 kilograms. I don't know how many McDonald's cheeseburgers that is, but it sounds like a lot. We're running 5.4 liter naturally aspirated V8 on the Ford Mustang and a 5.7 liter V8 for the Chevy Camaro with around 600 horses.
Yep, and here is your starting grid. It's Daniel Thomas on pole position alongside Mattia Foligny. You got Daniel Stevens in third and Garen Batten in fourth. Edward Shelley and Uldis Puteklis complete row number 3 with Trevor Wawrowski, the championship leader, in 7th and Robert Nordway in 8th. 10, you got Kenzie van de Wecken in 9th place and David Baker in 10th. That's the first page of our starting grid, and I believe you have the second one. You stole the page from me, didn't you?
Oh, you're going to really test me with these names, aren't you? Claude Bilval in 11th, Marco Lorenzini in 12th, Jeff Scheimer in 13th, Wayne Hutchinson in 14th, John Lang in 15th, Sebastian Jackson in 16th, Gary Thomas in 17th, Joshua Hampton. As I lose my place, Joshua Hampton in 17th, Ray Partridge in 18th, Denny Pro in 19th, and Michael Hogg in 20th. Not too bad.
Not too bad at all. I think that was good. I think that was good. And one more driver, you got two more drivers actually, Håkan Schött and Claude Bilval in the starting grid. Actually, just one more Håkan Schött there in the starting grid, completing the 21 driver field, I do believe, as they are 10. Starting the race already, you got these guys racing for around 3 hours today, thereabouts. It's 81 laps, so that is one of the longer races, 10 in world calendar. It's gonna be a challenge, not only, as said, because it's Bathurst, but also because of the length of the race. So they are heading for the first time through the mountain loop and through Skyline as well. That's gonna be the next corner coming up here. You can see the sign and you can see them now dipping down into the dipper. You turn left and you turn right, and then you brake downhill as you plummet into the left-hander once again. Try to navigate between these concrete barriers, and a couple of more S's coming up. Then the downhill braking zone once again into Forest's Elbow and down the hill. Finally, you can press onto the accelerator. You can go flat out down the Conrod Straight, and it's Stevens very close to Foligny in the second place. You got Daniel Thomas riding away just a little bit, not too much, but just a little bit here, 7/10 of a second, but they are still in a nice draft queue. The Mustangs 10 in 1, in 2, in 3. Quite a lot of Mustangs, as a matter of fact. The first Chevy you got in this field is not Robert Nordway, and he is down in 8th position. So far it's Mustang domination, but we'll see if that lasts as we complete the first lap of this event and we get on to the second one, and it's only 8/10 of a second between the leading duo. Now you can really see, compared to yesterday when we were covering a whole different event, how this is, how clearly drivers are not only battling themselves, but they are also battling the track, and not as much each other early on.
Truly, they have to battle the track and win that battle in order to battle with the car in front of them. That's for sure. Mount Panorama is awfully challenging, and with the 23 corners that are available to negotiate over the 2-minute laps that these drivers are running. Last lap around, being the initial lap, was around a 2:11. Expect those times to come down just a little bit. But right now, it's Thomas leading the charge by 1 second, and Foligny in second place, followed by Stevens in third, and it's still very close, and we've got some good close pack racing still, and the cars aren't very aero dependent. The aerodynamic qualities being negated a little bit and Mount Panorama not being too aerodynamically challenging. And we've got a Ford Mustang challenged by a Camaro in the rear view mirror right now, and that is going to look awfully menacing coming down the mountain into Forest Elbow. Beautiful camera shots here. These are absolutely amazing. As we come down into Forest Elbow, we get a beautiful pan shot of the cars coming around and plummeting down the hill into the Conrad Straight. And this is going to be your first real attacking opportunity since you got to Hell's Corner. Now, will you make an attacking move coming down into the chase, or are you too far back to go for one? Through the kink, it's going to be completely flat on board with Robert Northway right now. He looks to the inside line, but just a glance, doesn't want to leap anything on the table just yet. And we've got a long race left to go. 2:55 remaining on the clock, folks.
Yep, so that's still a lot of time left in this race. 81 laps it is time to. So Robert Northway, the Kiwi driver, racing in the European split. Nothing wrong with that, mind you. Just challenging, taking on all of these guys. We got drivers from Europe, we got drivers from Australia, from New Zealand, we got drivers from North America as well. It's truly a worldwide event here. Northway is just chasing Uldis Puteklis from Latvia here. So one driver from the Baltics, another driver from New Zealand. Meanwhile, we got a fight here. Marco Lorenzetti making the pass and getting through Jeff Schmeier there. So the Dog Beer Racing driver has to concede a position, and Lorenzetti then going to the cutting and trying to tackle on this mountain section well enough to catch on to John Lang then in 11th position. John Lang, the next one coming up for him. So we got a couple of battle packs going on, but really the previous one, actually this one we're following right here, is perhaps the most interesting at this moment in time, because you got Edward Shelley in 5th, you got Gensi van der Werken in 6th place, you got Uldis Puteklis in 7th and Robert Northway in 8th. All of those guys in close completion with each other, and then it's Trevor Wawrowski, the championship leader, just half a second away, currently in 9th place, but look for him to improve his positions as he has done so many times throughout this season.
That Camaro looks so good coming through the Dippa, and it's just not carrying a lot of speed coming down the Conrad Straight compared to its competitor in that Ford Mustang. I wonder if that 5.7 is really just not got its legs cut out for it coming down Conrad, but it is nimble enough to be able to attack coming down into the mountain section. Looking at John Lang right now, on board with him even in the right-hand drive vehicle. If you're looking for the driver's wheel on the left-hand side, well, you're looking in the wrong place if I was. And I do want to correct you on the pronunciation. It's not the Dipper, it's the Dippa, as they say down under. Yeah. And a close pack battle up ahead as well, as Patulkis is chasing down Workin, and they're going to go side by side coming through corner number 1, and this is where you get the move executed, or at least start to stage it up before you get down to Corey Bend. The side by side action begins coming through Hell's Corner, and it'll be a long drag all the way down to Corey Bend. Looking to the inside line is that Camaro on the Ford Mustang. Will he send it on the brakes? He does try to, but the Ford Mustang closes it off, and the Camaro has a bit of a wiggle on the brakes, locks up and goes sideways, and the whole field gets backed up behind the 7th place 666 from Latvia.
Yeah, that's a good save then from Northway there. So you had for a moment Robert Northway in a bit of a trouble, but manages to save it just about. Braking a little bit too late, perhaps losing the rear end in the middle of the corner, but doing a good job of saving it. Meanwhile, we got wall contact. It's Wacken who is hitting the wall, the concrete wall there on the outside. Now let's see about the damage. That because those walls, they do not give in at all. Mind you, these are concrete barriers pretty much all around this mountain section of the track, and you can already see some damage on the left-hand side too. So there's been a couple of contacts. Of course, the later one was to the right-hand side then, and I'm sure Uldis Puteklis has seen those. He's seen what happened in front and knows that, okay, the driver before me, well, he is in a bit of a trouble. I better apply more pressure put some weight on him, additional ones even, and then try and get a pass done either by overtaking on track or just waiting for him to slap one of those walls a little bit too hard. That's always one of the plays here, and one of the tricks of putting on the pressure. You're not really trying to improve your position, you're just trying to screw over the guy in front of you, aren't you?
That really is the key to getting through the mountain section, is pressure will be paramount to your success here. If you can pressure the driver in front, the guy, the gal, the whomever is in front of you into making some more critical mistakes through that mountain section, it'll set you up coming out of Forest Elbow and running down the long Conrad straight here, nearly 1.1 miles long, and man, it's one of the most iconic pieces of tarmac here at Bathurst, the fastest section down under for sure. Looking at Jeff Scheimer now from the United States, and he's chasing down the car in front of him, and he might go for a move here. The battle for 12th and 13th position still up for grabs, and racing for John plastered across the hood. This is the Dog Bear team. He's looking pretty good on track, but can he negotiate the mountain section? We'll find out over the next 80 laps or so.
Yeah, we got 76 laps left on this one. We are on the 5th one, so very much still early goings of this event. I like those Dog Bear liveries. I do like them a lot. Normally red and green should never be seen, but I think that's an exception. Mainly because that's like a very dark, more like a British racing green, really. You got very dark green, forest green sort of there, and you don't really have those eye-catchingly bright reds going on. It's a more of a different shade, as we see a mistake then just ahead of him. So just going straight through the skyline. Meanwhile, I think the situation is that Van der Wagen has been overtaken, and he has by Uldis Puteklis. Puteklis then up to 6th place and getting ready to chase Shelley here through the chase. Perhaps they've got 4 seconds between them, so this pack should gain some pace from here on out. The question is, what will Northway and what will Wawrowski do now that they are behind Wagen? Is he gonna be able to stay behind Puteklis, or is it potentially gonna be a separation of the pack? We just have to wait and see, but right now it looks pretty good for Uldis Puteklis, and we'll see those lap times soon as we get a proper clean one with him leading this pack. Oh, and that's a mistake from Wagen. That's a mistake from Wagen, and he allowed Northway, but Northway is on the wrong side coming into the cutting. He's on the outside. They're overtaking. It's certainly not impossible, but it's going to be very, very difficult, as you really want that inside line heading up the hill and into the right handle. Let's see what happens here. Wagen on the inside, and it's Northway on the outside, and it is indeed Wagen being able to hold his position, and Northway actually losing an extra one, because that is Trevor Wawrowski, the championship leader, getting by him in an instant. And that's just why you have to count your chances, and you have to pick your chances.
Absolutely true. And one of the most challenging things to do here at the mountain is to be able to negotiate getting a pass done. And speaking of passes done, there is a move up the inside coming through what looks like right before the sunset bend. Holy Toledo, that's usually not a passing opportunity. 3rd corner up the hill in the mountain, and man, that was awfully tricky on the Dog Bear car. The car, that livery that looks so good on the racetrack, could not keep up the defensive line. But as we were just speaking about attacking and defending, it's really one of the challenges here coming through the mountain section, because if you give up just that little bit of time to your opponent and go into a side-by-side battle, as we saw going in towards Quarry Bend or Griffin's Mount, the problem is that you're going to get passed up by another car or even 2 cars throughout this race. With such close pack racing that we're seeing right now, no car is separated on the racetrack by more than a second, as it were. So currently, if you make a critical mistake going up the hill, you're going to lose a position or even 2 and especially during some of the faster parts of the track, coming down the Conrad Straight, going through the chase, coming through Hell's Corner, you're definitely going to lose that much more. Looking at the battle for 18th right now, this is going to be Wayne Hutchinson currently, and Håkan Sharp in 17th position, and Wayne Hutchinson in 18th, and Claude Baval in 19th position. This is coming into the final corner right now. It's looking all pretty nip and tuck currently for the Dog Bear team from Canada. They're doing a great job keeping it calm, cool, and collected on the racing surface, but in their sim rigs, I'm sure they're sweating. Marco going for a move into Quarry Bend. Got one done on David Baker from the US of A. My fellow countryman doing pretty well for himself. Now in 11th position. And looking back at the battle for 18th, 17th position currently, looking to the inside line for Quarry Bend. This might be a lick of the stamp and a send, but the Dog Bear team decides better of it currently, trying to set them up for a critical mistake. Coming through Quarry Bend is awfully challenging, especially when that driver is on the optimum line, but setting someone up for a mistake at the cutting is a little bit easier. Going onto the optimum line, running a little bit deeper there, and now we're coming up to the hill and up into Griffin's Mount next. And then the left-hander is going to be Reed Park. Next corner is going to be named Solomon Park, and that'll be the fast left-hander right before McPhillamy Park and Skyline coming down the hill. The iconic Skyline where you're going to be braking right before the braking board above your head, braking in a straight line, kind of pointing towards the tree, then turning right, turning left, then turning right again before you get to the Dippa.
Yeah, and that's when you dip down, and you even in the sim rig, you sort of feel that in the bottom of your stomach, just with the way when you're going down that hill and all the weight is going to the front of the car, and it's one of those places where you feel like, oh man, I'm going so slowly, I can go through this faster, surely. And next thing you notice that you're overloading the front suspension and you're in the wall, because that can happen so easily. That's why you see a bit more room between the drivers and the walls, and you also see a bit more room early on in this race. We are still in lap 8, and that is now then Kenzie van der Wacken into the pit lane from, he was in that 8th-9th place battle. We saw him earlier overtaken by Uldis Puteklis and being attempted to overtake by Robert Nordway, who ended up losing a position there, but then getting into the pit lane early, potentially to repair some of the damage. Meanwhile, we are getting a lead pack sighting, and this reminds me of a comment from the chat where we got C. Barry asking who are the big players here, 10 boys, and I will reply that the big players, well, we saw the championship standings earlier. Obviously, Trevor Wawrowski, who is in 7th place in this race, leading the championship. Then I gotta mention also Garen Batten in 4th place in this race, who's 2nd in the championship. And Daniel Thomas in the lead of this race, he's sitting in 3rd place of the championship. So those are really the big guys. Now, I also gotta give a shout out to Uldis Puteklis, the Latvian driver. Whenever I've seen him, he has just caught my eye, because he has that, he has just somehow has a very eye-catching style of racing. He's a racy kind of guy, and he is improving fast. If you look at it in terms of the iRating, roadside iRating with these guys, then the highest iRatings on the field are with Daniel Thomas and Mattia Foligny, as well as then Trevor Wawrowski, who are all on the north side of 5,000. And
speaking of...
Yeah, one more thing, just gotta mention, a lot of, we do have a fan for Marco Lorenzetti in the chat, so that's great to see.
That is great to see as well. But speaking of iRating, I do want to point out that Dan Stevens, who's running in 3rd position right now, only has an iRating of 1.7K, and he's competing with someone, like you said, who's in the 5K iRating plus, and he's being chased down by Garen Batten with 4.1K iRating. He's doing a great job keeping this one really calm, cool, and collected. As we see his cockpit camera on the right-hand side of your screen, he's even got a sequential shifter set up on his triples monitor setup. That is absolutely fantastic to see, that he is just that immersed into his sim rig, that he has all of the settings just at his fingertips. Look at that button box that he's got, as well as the LED lights. It's just absolutely phenomenal.
Oh,
Hutchinson is off into the final corner, it looks like, and they're definitely going to have to come down pit road to get that repaired. A couple of wheels off at the curbing, I would imagine, at the exit of the chase, spun him around and sent him into the wall, I could only imagine. But I'm sure we'll get a replay of what happened to Wayne Hutchinson from Canada here shortly.
Yeah, man. I mean, well, the Canadian hopes went as well as they usually do in NHL these days. And Hutchinson then so he's gotten a bit of help, and I believe that's Håkan Schött with him on the inside, and they tangled, and it's Wayne Hutchinson taking the worst of that impact with Håkan able to continue, and that explains why he was in the wall at such an odd place, because I was thinking that's far, even if you lose it on the outside curbing on the exit of the chase. But yeah, that will explain it. Wayne Hutchinson now then taking his spare car very, very early on and being able to continue the race. However, he is well over half a minute back on the next position, which is going to be Michael Hogg in 19. So that's going to be a long uphill climb. And we're not just talking about the one exiting turn number 1. Meanwhile, Mattia Foligny and Daniel Stevens, second and third.
Epic battle here in the battle for third position right now. We still can get a caution to get called out here tonight, folks. Don't forget about the safety car that can be spontaneously erupting on the mountain circuit and bunch this field back up and get us another beautiful race restart that we saw earlier on in this event. And Daniel Stevens from New Zealand, the Kiwi from Down Under, doing a great job on his presumably home track to keep this one calm, cool, and collected himself, running in third position. And let's look at his fast lap right now. That'll be a 209.7, keeping very much in touch with Foligny in second place right now. Trevor Vorowski in seventh position from the US of A, my home country, of course, is running very well in that Ford Mustang. And there's a little bit of a mistake from the car in front, and it looks like he's going to close down that gap coming down into Griffin's Mount and Reed Park, Solomon Park. But the gap right now is around 0.6 of a second and closing at a rate faster than not, that's for sure. Headed down into Sunset. Who's going to be better on the brakes here? And it'll be mounting the curb for the car in front, but no mounting for Vorowski right now, as he's doing a good job, looking like he is just on the absolute attack right now. And it's something about SimRacing, a little kiss of the wall there even. He is on the chase so ferociously. It's something about the mountain and being able to smell a little bit of blood in the water coming through the mountain section, seeing that your opponent is making a little bit of a mistake here or there, getting that delta to come down just that much more just gets you to drive a couple tenths faster lap after lap, I think.
Yeah, and it's exactly that. Your confidence is building here so much. First couple of laps, you're a little bit anxious, you're a little bit intimidated by the mountain. You see those concrete walls, and then your confidence grows. You start to sort of see, okay, I can gain a little bit here, I can get through faster here. Hey, it didn't bite. And when it doesn't bite, then that's when you want to sort of get closer and closer to the limit. And yeah, you will find that limit eventually, but the true real masters, they know exactly what the limit is, where it lies, and get as close to it as possible, because here you can have even 1.5 second, 2 second time difference in lap times just from your guts alone, just from how much you practice, how much confidence do you have. In modern motorsport, usually it's more about technical precision. It's more about practice time, setups, etc., etc. It's not really about guts and bravery to go fast. It's more about precision and cold, calculated skill. But in here, in Bathurst, it's still also about guts and willing to take those chances. So we'll see Sebastian Jackson here in 14th place, just chasing down Gary Thomas in 13th. Looking to the inside, Jackson then, and will he be able to make the move, just pushing Thomas a little bit to the outside. Oh, they're still side by side into the cutting, and this is now advantage Thomas then. who is on the inside into the cutting. Does he break in time? Yes, he does, and that means Gary Thomas is able to hold on to the 13th place, which is not unlucky this time around. I should mention, by the way, Håkan Schött, who was also involved in that collision with Wayne Hutchison, did get a black flag in the pit lane earlier on, and that's why he is 1 lap down and might be out of this event. Let's hope not. Oh, and Thomas hits the wall. Just a tiny bit of contact into the wall, and that brings Jackson even closer and closer. Again, taking those chances, taking those risks, but you want to sort of build up to it, don't you, Sakar? You want to build up to the chance taking instead of just suddenly deciding I'm going to go half a second faster here.
And it's so hard to be able to produce that half a second for sure. You really have to build up that pace and that confidence, like you said, and then one brief kiss of the wall, whether it's a smooch or whether it's a clattering of lips against that wall. It really is a challenge, and you really have to build up that confidence, especially after you have a brief contact with one of the barriers here at Mount Panorama. You really have to kind of rework all of that. It's one thing to build up the speed and momentum coming down lap after lap, working in the cold tires into their operating window. But then once you get up to that operating window and then you have that brief touch with the wall, it really shakes things up for you, and it will really challenge your mental fortitude. I've talked about it last race. I'll talk about it again. Can you recover after making little mistakes like that? And Foligny having a bit of a drifting moment coming up the hill, but still looking like he is on the absolute limit of what he's able to produce right now. Trying to shake off the car in third place. That'll be Stevens, Dan Stevens, in third place currently, but can't shake him off more than a stick right now. He's down 0.6 of a second, chasing Thomas out in P1, who's maintained that gap right around 1.6 seconds since the beginning of this race. Hasn't really gone anywhere. Last laps around, let's talk about lap time. 209.5, 209.6, 209.5 from the trio at the front.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you actually read my mind there, because you got 0.5, 0.6, 0.5, 0.6 for the four drivers. If we include Garen Batten as well in fourth, and why wouldn't we include Kim in that? He's a little bit further away in terms of time. He's 3.3 away from Stevens, but that at this moment in time ain't much at all. So Stevens then, I think, is the real question is, how much pace does Stevens have? Is he actually faster in this moment in time than Matteo Foligny, and just kind of stuck behind him, not able to get past on the straight? Let's see. He's using the last corner really well, just using all the curbing, and you can see fastest laps then starting to update. You got purple, and it sticks with Daniel Stevens, who just put up a 209.337. That's 600ths of a second faster than Foligny, and that's 400ths of a second faster than Thomas. So very tight. All of them starting to push that envelope, starting to get into the low end of the 209s as the car gets lighter and as they gain more confidence coming into lap number 13. And here is the championship leader, Trevor Wawrowski, who's made a trademark of being consistent. Of course, being fast, but also being consistent, and that counts so much here. We can't talk enough about how much consistency counts for here. Just avoiding that one silly error that sends you to the wall will gain you so many positions. And he is chasing the Latvian, Uldis Puteklis. The Latvians, of course, starting to come into their own in sim racing as well. A great country in the middle of the Baltics. I've been there a couple of times. They got a great racing culture as well in places much like they got drifting there, they got rallying there, and they also have a surprisingly low minimum age limit for rallying. You can drive full-scale rally cars at 16 years old, which means drivers like Kalle Rovanperä have actually made their adult racing debut in Latvia.
Wow, that is absolutely phenomenal. Being able to get behind the wheel of a full-size drift car or a full-size rally car before you even get your real license has got to be a very interesting feeling, to say the least. Of course, in the United States, getting your license at 15 and a half being pretty scary thing looking back in time. I wouldn't have trusted myself at 15 and a half with a license and a car. I definitely don't trust some of the kids today to be able to do the same. Yeah, right? But more so on the racing today, the drivers getting very comfortable with their sim rigs, a little bit of ascend on the chicane there for Vorovsky, and he just loses out a couple of tenths there, marginally. Fastest lap being stolen back away from Daniel Thomas. Looking at Claude right now as he chases down the Camaro in front of him currently, and this is going to be definitely a move going into the kink, but will this be a successful move? I can only pray and hope so. Side by side going through the kink, and cooler heads prevail as the 89 backs out of that one pretty quickly, and that'll be Hampton not looking like he wanted to put up too much of a fight there.
Yeah, going side by side through the kink in lap number 14, perhaps not the best of ideas. One of the more dangerous corners, because again, these cars understeer a lot. Even if they're, you know, a 1,350 kilos, that's not too much when you consider the weight of modern cars, but that's still quite a lot. That's around 2,700 pounds for the metrically challenged folks watching their watching this race. So yeah, a little bit lighter than, for example, you got NASCARs and stuff coming up, but then again a little bit heavier than you have in most of the places in Europe, but a little bit lighter than their Generation 2 counterparts too. So Claude Belval then being able to get that overtake done and starting to chase after Gary Thomas in 14th place and being able to put up a bit of a gap too, and you can actually see behind him Hampton putting his windshield wiper on.
Windshield wiper on, probably just to get some debris out of his field of view, I would imagine, as we're not expecting rain for this event, but that safety car still under threat currently should we get a huge blockage on the track, but no blockages to be found. Everybody running in pretty clean air right now for the most part, and keeping it clean as the car gets a little bit airborne on the approach to sunset. It's beautiful to see a little graze of the wall as the sparks come flying off the Fusion car out in 14th position right now. That'll be Thomas who's out there pushing his little heart out as much as possible. Not on the defensive right now, but Claude Belval is looking like he's on the attack, currently trying to change up his standings right now from 15th to 14th at the very least. And let's take a look at that time. The last lap around would be a 2:11.5 compared to a 2:12 from Gary Thomas out in front. And he might go for this move here again towards the kink. Not the best opportunity to make an overtake maneuver stick, but he does so with relative ease.
Yeah, and you just saw him on the mountain section gaining a lot of confidence. You could see the difference between Belval and Thomas. Belval getting much closer to the walls. Here is Van der Wacken then looking for a pass into the last corner, not quite able to pull it off, but that's a slide 10 ahead of him, and that allows Van der Wacken to get to the inside for a moment and actually get the pass done. So he is up to 16th place, passing Josh Hampton, who just made a slight error coming out of the last corner, and that means he's able to get that pass done with relative ease. So you can see the drivers sort of driving different races at this moment in time. Some of them just taking it easy, some of them gaining more confidence. I will keep one eye on the progress of Claude Belval as he finally got the pass done. How quickly is he able to catch up to Sebastian Jackson, fellow Canadian, who is next up in the queue? Meanwhile, we are watching Trevor Wawrowski then battling for the 6th place, still behind Uldis Puteklis. And Puteklis will be surely using all that Latvian racing experience he's got to try and keep the championship leader at bay. But will he able to do it? Again, coming to the chase, but I don't see Wawrowski getting quite as close, and I don't see Puteklis giving it up as easy as we see further down in the pack. Oh, and we have a fight for the lead, and that is Thomas and Fuligny. Then Fuligny trying to challenge to the last corner. I believe that's a mistake from Thomas because he was almost 2 seconds ahead last time by. And let's see the lap times. Yeah, that's a 2:11.4 from Daniel Thomas, and that's a 2:09.9 from Mattia Fuligny. And then Fuligny going up the hill once again, still holding on to the lead. You can see some lapped cars ahead of them as well. But Fuligny now on the chase, and he can see the leader ahead of him. And Saga really, now we have a three-way battle for the lead all of a sudden. That's just a mountain for you.
Really is, and a really bad mistake from Daniel Thomas must have been the cause of that poor running lap. Had to have been the only thing that makes any sense right now. But Foligny doing a great job, the driver from Italy, trying to close down the gap, managed to do so, went for the move coming into the final corner, but just couldn't quite get the over-under completed. Now, though, he's under threat from Dan Stevens running the 6.49 behind, and Dan Stevens has been running really well and consistent as far as his lap times are concerned. 0.3 faster than his opponent on that previous lap. But look at Daniel Thomas just escaping with his life right now. Knew that he made a mistake, picked up the pace, lit a fuse under his derriere, and he is off to the running. 1.4 seconds the gap.
Yeah, so you saw a little bit of an error then from Foligny at the early part of the mountain, then catching himself a little bit sideways, and that's going to cook up your rear tires. And the thing is, you got corners coming up at you so fast at the uphill section, you don't really have a straight line to cool the tires off. So he's going to have to fight those overheated tires all the way to the straight. Now on a straight line, you got a bit of a chance to cool them off. Let's see how much confidence he has going through the kink and into the chase, but that's going to be so frustrating. You finally caught up to the leader, and then you have to just bleed out all that time you gained on the mountain section, and that's going to play tricks to your mind. That's going to be something that he's going to have to fight himself right now. The biggest fight between his own ears, and then heading to the last corner, and once again a little bit sideways from Foligny. Once again losing that grip. The tires are starting to bleed, the tires are starting to cry out. They're telling, come on man, I can't hold on to this pace. We can't hold on to this pace. You're asking too much from them. And just like that, the gap is back to 1.8 seconds as they do get some lapped cars, and that is Wayne Hutchinson then in 20th place ahead of them. Wayne letting the leader past nice and easy on the uphill section. Meanwhile, Belval, who we kept one eye on, has improved his lap times consistently, and he is now right behind Sebastian Jackson.
This is an epic showdown for sure. Battles everywhere we look on the racetrack. Leaders trying to catch up to back markers, and P2, P3 will have to wait very patiently as they get through the mountain section to try to negotiate that marker on the racetrack. Now the number 14, the number 56, trying to go for a move, look to the inside line, didn't go for the leap of faith. The Dog Bear team from Canada challenging for the next position up the order, the number 13th place position, and that'll be driven by Sebastian Jackson currently. Claude Beval is really looking menacing right now, has improved that lap time by a considerable amount, has already taken their first pit stop already, and there it is. The opportunity presents itself, doesn't need to be asked twice for Thanksgiving dinner, just barges right on in and takes the position when it was offered the first time.
Yeah, and that's very well done from Claude Belval. You saw him sell a sort of a dummy 10 into the second corner. Meanwhile, here's the second place battle. Daniel Stevens of New Zealand, very familiar with this place. These are cars the New Zealanders, of course, very familiar with, as are the Australians. And supercars, kind of their home turf, looking to challenge the Italian intruder here. Even if it is the European race, they'll feel like the Europeans are the intruders, not quite as familiar with these type of cars, even if they had a lot of practice in. Stevens now getting a little bit tired, perhaps following Foligny, who has trouble with his tires. Meanwhile, the leader, Daniel Thomas, putting in the fastest lap time of them all, getting into 209.0. We'll soon see the first drivers heading into the 208s potentially. That's not too far away, less than a tenth away, but let's see what Stevens can do. Up the hill, has a nice draft. Will he try to sell a dummy? No, he will not. Still sticking behind and still just kind of letting Foligny pick his braking spots nice and early. But you can see the Welsh driver, Daniel Thomaston, just having a nice and easy time of it, making that one mistake, recovering from it really well. That is so impressive that he is able to withstand all that pressure, letting the drivers behind make the mistakes and extending his lead by 1 full second last time around, and already a couple of tenths from the start finish line. Still getting better and better as we're watching Michael Hogg of Scotland 19th place. He's gonna be soon up with the leaders who are coming up behind him. Just trying to survive on this course at this moment in time. Looking like he's in a minor bit of difficulty at the moment, not too much. Meanwhile, Gary Thomas losing another position then. This time it is to Joshua Hampton, who was able to get the pass done for 16th place. So Joshua Hampton getting the pass done in the hell corner in the first bend of the track and running away right and immediately. So positions changing, and this is the moment in time really that we're starting, Sagar, to see the fatigue factor of this race. 18 laps, sure, it doesn't sound like much, but when you got over 2-minute lap times, that means they've been racing for close to 40 minutes now. And not only that, but each and every lap is more difficult than the last, because sure, the car gets faster, but the tires are wearing out. Your mental fatigue is starting to set in, and those mistakes are going to compound. Every single mistake is gonna stick to the back of your mind, and meanwhile you're gonna have to battle this track each and every lap around, and the gaps are showing that they are fluctuating, because last time around you saw the gap being 2.5 seconds. Now it's only 1.2 between the leaders.
Yeah, and I did want to give credit and just talk about that mental fortitude. Daniel Thomas pulled out a 1.5 second gap immediately after being challenged by Feligny from P2. Absolutely amazing recovery drive that he was able to produce on that next lap, but the fatigue is absolutely setting in right now, and the traffic is obviously becoming a thing, indicating that the lap times are going to be fluctuating just that much more. Settling in behind some drivers and passing in the mountain section is sure going to cost you some time. We did see a 2:10 come out from Daniel Thomas that last lap around, and 2:09s from Feligny and Stevens in P2 and P3. Now I imagine that the gap's going to fluctuate the other way as Stevens and Feligny both drivers, as I get the marbles out of my mouth, had to challenge the mountain section and get by a back marker. Daniel Stevens, though, did a great job, I must say. The 1.7K iRating driver challenging some major Goliaths here tonight, but he's doing such a good job to defend his home country and his home turf here at the Bathurst Mountain Panorama Circuit. And they're going to challenge all the way down to the very end. Like you said, we've got 40 minutes of running time under our belt, but it's gone by in a blink of an eye currently as we approach the 19th lap completed here, coming through the kink right before we get down to the chase the following. And it's just turning into a beautiful event. We thought that we were going to have that many drivers participating. Looking at the practice session, we have over 20 drivers, 22 drivers participating here tonight, and it's just been a humdinger of a time. The drivers all competing very ferociously right now for all of the track positions that they could possibly gain, and we've seen some interesting pit stop calls be taken into effect as well. 209.023 new fastest lap set by Dan Stevens. The 1.7K iRating driver is the fastest man on track. Like you said earlier, as the fuel comes down, the weight starts to dissipate a little bit, but the tire wear increases, allows the drivers to maybe slide a little bit more through these corners and gain a little bit more speed and confidence as they challenge their opponents. And the slipstream obviously helping Dan Stevens as well as he comes down the very, very long Conrad straightaway. But it's been all up to this man, Daniel Thomas, leading the charge right now. He's slowing down a little bit. The gaps come down to under 1 second and fluctuating right around that threshold here as we approach the mountain for the 20th time of asking. It's looking pretty calm, cool, and collected for the driver from Wales currently, but he's seemingly on the back foot right now, just maybe losing that confidence and that pace that he was so good at showing earlier on in the stint. And getting to the Dippa now, it's looking like he is just not on the threshold of his skill anymore. He maybe dialed it back that 1 or 2% after his clatter with the wall or whatever incident that he incurred that resulted in him losing that 2-second lead earlier on in this event.
Yeah, that's 2 mistakes he's made so far, but I don't see any damage on his car, so potentially just one of those sideways moments like you saw with Foligny a couple of times, and he's doing the smart thing of dialing back his pace just a tiny little bit, not taking the chances, trying to conserve the tires and not letting them overheat too much, because you saw what happens when you get sideways at the early part of the mountain section. You're gonna have to hold back for the entire section. That's gonna easily cost you 1.5 seconds. We see Foligny potentially looking like he was going to the pit lane, but not quite doing so just yet. Instead, trying to hold a sort of halfway defensive line into the last corner, just making sure that Stevens isn't gonna try and pull off an overtake, just as we talked about. Thomas holding back, he put in the fastest lap time of the race, getting right back on the threshold of the 209s, a 209.002, so that's just 2 milliseconds, 2/1000th of a second away from the elusive 208s, and that's putting in a purple. Meanwhile, the Australian driver, Garen Batten, the leading Australian here in this race, in 4th place. His last lap time was at 2:10.1, so he's now around 7 seconds away from the leader of this race, around 5 seconds away from the back ahead, just biding his time, but he's in a great place here. Being able to hold his own. He's got 5 seconds ahead of him and he's got 4 seconds behind him. Meanwhile, I just saw it on the timing ticker, Wawrowski finally got that move down on Puteklis.
Yeah, and he did get that move done out of the corner of my eye as well. Garen Batten, though, the driver from Australia, just chilling on an island of himself right now, drinking a pina colada. He's got 4 seconds to the car in front of him and a 6-second gap back to Wawrowski in P5 right now. And he's just driving a masterclass right now. Look at him go as he adjusts the wheel and the steering inputs, coming down into the forest elbow out of the dipper. He's looking pretty good, calm, cool, and collected. As I say, most of these drivers are. They're competing at a very high skill level, and you can just see the leaders in glimpse right in front currently. Garen Batten on an island of his own, just hanging out in 4th place, running his own race. He's basically hot lapping right now, but he can see that the drivers ahead are battling for that position and trying to stay very close to them as much as possible. Edward Shelley, the driver in 5th position from the UK, driving the number 34 right now, is only 4.2 seconds back. Then we have Trevor Wawrowski in 6th place from the US of A. Well, that's not a very US of A name. And Daniel Thomas does breach the 208 threshold with a 208.944 that last time around. He definitely lit the fuse under his seat and is running with it right now. The driver from New Zealand, Robert Northway, currently running in 8th position, chasing down the driver ahead. And he's doing a good job of staying one of the lead Camaros, if I'm not mistaken. I'll double check that. No, he is the lead Camaro currently. Yeah. The only one. Gained nothing, lost nothing so far as positions are concerned. Ooh. John Lang mounting the curbs, coming through the chase currently, and is on the attack right now. And that'll be Claude Belval, the driver out in front, the green liveried car. The Dog Bear machine looking pretty good, but is under threat for sure currently from the Camaro behind. John Lang has a bit of a wiggle coming through the final corner, and I don't think this is going to be attack going into corner number 1. He's a little too far back to make anything work just yet, but forcing those mistakes and those errors is going to be critical. So Belval did pass him on that last lap, and John Lang is trying to snatch back that position quick, fast, in a hurry, but will be under threat currently from the car behind if he goes for a move that doesn't end up working out in his favor.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, I wondered if that was the other way around, because Belval has been making that charge. We watched it earlier, getting past Back and getting past Long. and now sitting in that 12th place. Meanwhile, we got a fight for the second. Daniel Stevens finally making the move, trying to make it stick to the inside. Can he hold on, or does Foligny have an attack into the chase? It is Stevens holding on just about very much on the threshold of the brakes and goes wide. He goes wide. Is he able to hold on? Yes, he blocks the outside line, and Foligny does not have an attack. He's looking to the inside, trying to make Stevens miss his braking zone, but Stevens turns in. You can see him just battling with his car on the right bottom side of your screen, and here you go. A proof that iRacing is not always the end-all, be-all. The man with 1700 from New Zealand, showing that he may not have the official race iRatings that everybody else does, but he does have the experience. He may have the league experience, and you can see it from his license as well, an A 4.99, that he's been able to stay on track, and he is certainly on track to land in a podium, perhaps a victory here today. What a drive that would be from Daniel Stevens, but he's now free to chase after his fellow Daniel, Dan Thomasten, on the leading. It's a Welshman versus a Kiwi versus an Italian. They're on the top 3 positions here at Major Series Europe at Bathurst 500. So Foligny now, his task will be to follow Stevens through, to try and hold on to this charging Kiwi in second place and potentially try and reel himself into that leading battle. You can see just Stevens taking the chances. Meanwhile, it's Kenzie van der Wacken from Netherlands, the Dutch driver, in 14th place, and he is under pressure. Pressuring Langton from 13th. Saw what Belval did earlier on, trying to follow through on the outside, not quite able to pull it off. It's very difficult to pass on the outside there, and really your best chance is to do what Belval did earlier on, which is to try and fool the driver in front of you, to break himself out, to break too late, and as a result of that, get an easy pass. Instead, he makes a wall tap. Just a slight contact, checking out the structural integrity of those concrete barriers, Sagar, and still finding out that they are quite strong.
Yeah, I would call that more than just a kiss. That's some sweet lovemaking with the barrier there, for sure. Man, that was very close to being disastrous for Van der Werken. And man, oh man, that just goes to show you how hard these drivers are pushing, trying to get a move done left, right, and center, not working out in their favor. At Quarry Bend, you're absolutely right. Very difficult to make an overtaking move happen going around the outside, because you really want to get sucked into that curbing on the inside line and spit you out to the curbing on the far left-hand side. I thought Van der Werken was going to go for a switchback maneuver, but the overlap was just existing there, and unfortunately unable to pull that rabbit out of the hat, unfortunately. Battle still rages on, and there's a very damaged dog bear car that we just saw a glimpse of. I'm not sure which driver that is, but expecting them to come down pit road here shortly as we finish up lap 24 of 81.
I think that's Ray Partridge down in 22nd place, and he's been damaged for a while. I've seen him in some of the shots, so maybe just waiting for the pit lane, maybe just deciding, okay, well, that's not affecting my lap times too much. By the way, the damaged car is still doing 2:15s round attack, well, 2:18s last time around, so it's certainly some seconds off the pace, but I think his race is all about finishing right now. Let's see what Van der Werken 10 getting ahead, Van der Werken getting ahead 10 of John Lang, excuse me. I always want to say Josh Lang, but it's John Lang. Just 3 letters in that given name. Meanwhile, Foligny, he's slowing down a fair bit. Now 2 seconds behind Dan Stevens. So I do wonder if those tires he was abusing so much earlier have finally starting to catch up to him, and he might have to come down to the pit lane shortly to give those a change. Otherwise, he will see that gap get bigger and bigger, and losing his touch on the leading duo of Thomas and Stevens. So Foligny 10 still in a great position, still in third, and not under threat from Gary Batten, in 4th place immediately, but still just dropping a bit of time. Let's see the lap times last time around. Now let's see Nordway. Oh my heavens me. Yeah, that was a send, and I don't think the Latvian post office will be too happy about that. Uldis Puteklis getting a contact to the side, but great job then from Norway realizing his mistake and letting Puteklis have that position back. But yeah, that was a send and a half.
A little bit more than a cent and a half. That was a egregious move, to say the least. Unfortunately, that was a very low percentage move that was not going to work out in favor. You could even tell with the clattering of door panels, the driver still barely made the corner to show you how much speed they were carrying. Sometimes it's hard to manifest how much speed the drivers are carrying coming through some of these corners, but they're on the absolute limit right now. They are driving their absolute hearts out. So making mistakes like that, bound to happen, especially in the heat of battle. Anything can and will happen in motor racing, and it typically does. And mistakes are just one of those things to look at as Robert Northway makes another mistake, makes some brief contact with the wall, and is I thought he was about to go around again. Another kiss of the wall coming through Griffin's mount right now, but he's nothing to shake a stick at. One thing I did want to mention is I thought I saw damage on Feligni's car. The front left wheel seemingly having a little bit of damage there. And I swear I caught more of that tire on the left-hand side than the right-hand side. And I think that's what's causing him to slow down that much more currently. I wonder if he will take a fast repair or just go for standard repairs when he does decide to come down pit road, which brings up another question. When are we going to see the drivers take their first stop of the race? We've had a handful so far. Right now it's been Claude Baval, Kenzie Van der Werken, and I'm seeing Wayne Hutchinson all taking their pit stops currently. And then we have Hakan Schutt and P21 and Ray Partridge in P22, both taking their pit stops so far.
Yeah, those were early stops due to damage. And you can just see Robert Norway there on board with him right now. And I wonder if he is carrying a bit of damage. Well, obviously from that wall contact and from that heavy hit into the side of Puteklis earlier on. The wheel looks to be relatively straight, but he's having to be very cautious into the corners, and I think that might be some minor suspension damage then on the right-hand side of the car, because you can see in the left-handers. Let's see in turn one once again if he's very wiggly on the exit. Yeah, he's having to be very careful on the exit or risking a slide, so that's affecting him right now. He is still a little bit faster than Puteklis in the bottom half of the track, but that's not much at all, and he's gonna have to be very cautious on the mountain section. Again, we saw him briefly first making that mistake in the chase and then hitting the wall last time around, so he's gonna have to calm down. But that's not easy to do. That's easier said than done, because you are worried about the mistakes, you're worried about just essentially not only repeating that mistake, but trying to recoup that time that you lost due to those mistakes. So it's very difficult to try and calm down when you see an opponent ahead of you, when you see a fellow driver ahead of you that you're trying to pass, that you think that you're faster than. And whoa, and that's Sebastian Jackson, as we saw Northway then just brushing the wall once again, and we see Sebastian Jackson then spinning it round on the last corner and getting it back going, potentially a little bit too wide on the curb on the exit. That can catch you out so easily. Just getting gingerly back on the throttle and trying to work his way back up front as we move on to Marco Lorenzetti in 9th place. 12 seconds back on Robert Northway.
Marco's got pretty good pace and consistency. His 2:10.2 being his fast lap and 2:10.8 being his last lap, showing you that the driver has got some pretty good pace. Daniel Stevens steals away the fast lap of the race on that previous attempt. He's running down into the 209s or 208s, excuse me, for the past 2 laps in a row. So he is nipping away at the battle for the lead here shortly. And he is not taking insurmountable leaps or risk, apparently. He is just nipping away a couple of tenths. Last lap around for Daniel Thomas was a 209.2 compared to the 208.9. So just nipping away, like I said, a couple of tenths here and there. And that will be huge for his race overall. Looking at David Baker, the driver from the United States, currently running in 10th position right now, also with some pretty good pace, 2010.7, 2010.8 being that last lap around, running very good. The driver in 11th, Jeff Scheimer from the United States, crossing the line right there in front of our very own eyes. And Jeff Scheimer's got some pretty stiff competition around him currently.
Yeah, and just want to talk briefly about the lap times when you mentioned Dan Stevens taking up the fastest lap and nipping away. Well, he got the fastest lap by 1 millisecond. I'm not joking. The fastest lap is 208.943, and Daniel Thomas in the lead has a 208.944. So yeah, that's talking about nipping away, and that's why I was laughing when I saw the fastest lap, because it's it's just such a cheeky thing. I'm sure it's you can't, even TS drivers can't measure the lap times down to 1,000 of a second, but it's just something something that you see fastest lap and you see purple and you think like, okay, now the chase is on, and it's 1 millisecond.
But still, a millisecond is a millisecond. Whether the stopwatch doesn't lie, let's just put it that way. He steals away the fast lap and is running really well right now. Claude Baval, the driver who has shaked and baked a couple of positions throughout this, running in 12th position right now, is down one from where they started, but was involved in an incident earlier on in this race, had to take a fast repair to get some damage shaken off of him. And now the fast lap is stolen away in good form by Daniel Thomas, the 208.938 being the new benchmark.
That's 5 milliseconds faster than the previous one. So they're you can just tell that how they're on the limit. Uldis Poteklis meanwhile coming to the pit lane. So the Latvian, as well as Ed Shelley actually. Yeah, Ed Shelley in the pit lane and Uldis Poteklis into the pit lane as well. So we're starting to see Peters from top 10 then getting into the lane, having a chance to repair some minor damage on their cars as well, but most importantly, getting 4 new tires and getting some fuel in just under 1 hour. So we're starting lap number 28. That would mean 56 for the next pit stops, and that would mean, hang on as I get my, yeah, it's a 2-stopper then for all of these guys, more or less. So that's well within the pit window, and this is now the earliest portion when drivers can start to get their pit stops in. I wonder when Thomas and Stevenson, Foligny and Bannon and Bobrovsky and others are heading there as well. They're still continuing on, and the traditional endurance strategy does dictate that the longer you can stay on track in your stint, the better, because that just means a shorter last pit stop. And we've seen these cars improving with the lighter fuel load too, so the potential of an overcut is definitely there. The car is improving as it gets lighter, even when the tires are starting to wear out. So you want to stay out there for as long as you can. Let's see now, Thomas then 1.5 seconds ahead of Stevens, just navigating through the chase. Now, the famous poet H.B. Baxter said that the chase is better than the catch, and the catch might be here because they come into the pit lane, just a little bit smoke from the brakes, and that's Dan Thomas making a slight error entering the pit lane, and another one trying to get his car slowed down to the pit lane speed limit. So Stevens is right up his tailpipe just from that, so just a little bit over anxious then heading to the pit lane.
Huge gains coming down pit road right there for Dan Stevens. Being able to inherit the lead of the race will be Vavrovsky, it looks like, as they decide to stay out, getting by the leaders of this event. But man, oh man, critical mistake there for Daniel Thomas, coming down pit road, locking up the brakes, and then getting squirrely on the rejoin there. It's just absolutely critical mistakes. The drivers 1, 2, 3, and 4 are all in pit lane, and then Northway pitting as well, with Lorenzetti also down pit road currently. So we're taking a lot of time in the pit lanes right now. The crews will stay busy for the next roughly 50 seconds or so as the drivers get a new change of tires, refueled, and spit back out onto the racetrack. And then we'll have Vavrovsky and David Baker inheriting P1 and P2, currently up 6 and 8 positions, but expect that to change once they take their pit stops. There go the leaders right now. There goes Daniel Thomas, and Dan Stevens. I almost said Daniel Stevens as well, but no. Now the gap's come down to something a little bit more tangible for Dan Stevens. He can see Daniel Thomas right in front of him. Not as close as I expected it to be, but it is a battle nonetheless, separated by just a handful of tenths right now. And Feligny now chasing down. That'll be Feligny chasing down Verken in P5 currently.
Yeah, so Kenzie van der Wagen then from the Netherlands in 5th place and Feligny in 6th currently, but Kenzie hasn't done his pit stop, I do believe, quite yet. So that means that he's gonna come into the lane in short order. Feligny then just behind, hoping that happens sooner rather than later because he's bleeding time. Meanwhile, you got the Danes 10, not yet in the lead, but they will be soon as everyone completes their pit stop. So I wonder what kind of dance this is going to be. I wonder if it's a round of foxtrot, maybe a waltz, maybe something else.
A ballet of sorts, a dance between the Dans, as it were. Currently coming through Forest Elbow for the 30th time of running on Mount Panorama. And this is as close of an opportunity as anyone's had to changing up the order. And will this be a move coming down into the chase? He's got a lot of speed. Going for the move during the kink is going to be awful dangerous. One of the drivers is going to have to back out here. Who's it going to be? And it's Stevens going a little bit deep and wide and almost brushing guards with the number 60 car that was in the lead of the race. But Daniel Stevens re-inheriting P3 and potentially the lead of this event comes shortly as the drivers Vavrovsky and Baker have come down pit road just now.
Yeah, and Dan Stevens then taking on the lead just now. Dan Thomas right behind and Feligny now 5 seconds behind him, so they are really in a battle of their own. But the real question to me right now is, do they keep battling? Because I know Thomas would want that lead back. At the same time, they see 5 seconds of daylight behind them. They see 5 seconds of clear daylight. Now extend that gap and you can battle it out later on. We're just in lap 30 of 81, but try and tell that to a couple of racing drivers. Go ahead, you try. Tell the drivers, don't battle it out. It's, you know, it's much smarter to build up that gap and then try to fight it out later on. And drivers are just like turning off the radio at that point and just keeping on going on. So yeah, that is an interesting question. Interesting question is that Stevens and Thomas, because they're both now well into the lead, does now Thomas stay behind Stevens, maybe try and save a little bit of fuel in his draft and try and extend this stint just one lap more, trying to gain an advantage that way via even shorter last pit stop? Or does he even have the opportunity to do that? Because I see Stevens right now, he's absolutely charging. It might not be a charger, but he is certainly charging and trying to build up that gap. You got tiny amounts of dirty air, of course, compounded by the walls. All that turbulent air is staying between those walls, much like you see in a street circuit. Formula One drivers complaining about it. Now it's not as extensive of an effect with these cars because they don't have as much aerodynamics, but you still see some understeer with these vehicles in the corners, and that is turning into draft, turning into fastest straight line times, straight line speeds rather, as they head onto the long downhill Conrad Straight. You see Thomas just catching up to him throughout the chase. So it's an intriguing battle and we'll be surely watching it.
A really amazing battle here for P1 currently brewing up, but we've got close pack racing up and down the grid that we've got to keep an eye on. Garen Batten trying to get by Van der Verken, if I'm not mistaken, and that is Van der Verken making a mistake coming through the final corner. A little bit of a wiggle getting on the brakes is all it took, moving over to the right-hand side of the lane. Oh, there's Northway going off at the chase and rejoins the racetrack, but I presume we'll give that position back to the driver behind. That'll be Patolkis in the driver behind.
Yeah, and Uldis Poteklis is probably a little bit tired of seeing Northway just making an absolute mess of the chase. I wonder if he's having some trouble with his braking point heading through the kink, because that's not the first time we see Robert Northway going the right way, or rather the wrong way, in the chase, just cutting through the grass. So I am interested to see if that's something to do with his braking point, if he's hitting the grass just a little bit under braking, and that's why he's sliding wide. It's so easy to essentially go through too fast through the kink, slide a little bit wide, hit the grass, get your car unsettled, and by the time you hit your braking point, it's about 50 meters too late. And even 10 meters is a significant difference, especially if you're on the edge to begin with. So Northway and Putekli still continuing the battle. Northway trying to chase, but he is very awfully wiggly indeed, and he's running the danger of really burning up those tires already early on in the stint. It's something you don't want to do, because they'll be driving 25, 26, 27, 28 laps even, close to 30 with this set of rubber, so you have to keep them in good condition. That's not what's happening for Northway right now. Again, he's right on the rugged edge through the skyline, but you see the car just sliding every tiny bit heading to the corner. That is overheating the tires. That is playing up the difficulties that you're already having down the hill, turning through the forest's elbow, and then getting that nice bit of tow from the Latvian once again, who in comparison is having a much calmer, cooler, more collected style of driving. So we see two different approaches. Let's see which one is proving victorious here in this one. And now you see again a different sort of approach heading to the braking zone. You see Putekli is just using all of the track and then some, heading sort of into the middle lane on the braking, whereas Northway was trying to keep it much more tighter, and it's Putekli is just a little bit sideways off the chase, again braking in that middle lane, just not wanting to get onto the marbles. So two different approaches here, very interesting to follow.
Yeah, and two completely different machines as well, competing under the same category. The 5.7 liter V8 single camshaft with 2 valves per cylinder Camaro ZL1 versus the Ford Mustang 5.4 liter Coyote V8 quad camshaft, 4 valves per cylinder with the aluminum block. Both cars spitting out at least 600 horses, and both cars running that V8 configuration. And it's very, very powerful machines around the mountain. Robert Northway again trying to get one done sooner rather than later, but it's challenging Puteklis. I want to get the name right. I apologize for my mispronunciation earlier, but challenging as much as possible and looking like, again, faster through the mountain section, but not as fast coming down the straightaway. It's just so odd to see this Camaro not competing at the same level as anyone else. Looking at the timing tower, and it looks like Northway is the leading driver in that Camaro. Kenzie van der Werken will eventually pit sooner rather than later. Well, they have already taken a pit stop, and that was on lap 7, I believe. Yes, lap 7. So has quite a ways that they can run before they have to make their final pit stop of the event. Here's Wawrowski trying to get by his opponent, Kenzie van der Werken, but van der Werken knows that they're on a completely different strategy than the rest of the field and succeeds that position pretty regularly.
Yeah, not putting up much of a fight at all with Wawrowski, and there's no point really fighting at that point. You gotta pick your battles here, especially in the mountain, but in any motor race. It's so important to choose who you're fighting with. So, yeah, Trevor Wawrowski now, he's a sort of a black horse I'm watching. Well, not really a black horse, he's leading the championship for crying out loud. So, a good result for him won't be that surprising, but he is just biding his time, driving a very well measured race. It's not turning into a super good position just yet, but watch for him to climb up the standings as the race progresses. Now we're watching Gary Thomas and John Hampton then in 16th and 17th position. You were talking about lighting a fuse under the derriere. Well, how about lighting a fusion under the derriere? That's certainly what Gary Thomas is doing in that fusion machine. Lovely livery, a pair of lovely liveries actually there with that black and gold, and you see the black and turquoise as well. Driving around the track, let's see just how big of a gap do they have. Well, not too big at all to the cars in front, so Josh Hampton then right ahead of him, trying to hold on to the position, trying to just keep it neat and tidy. But here comes Thomas to the inside, into the kink. It'll turn into outside on the chase, but will he be passed at this point? Yes, he will. You could see, again, cooler heads prevailing, as you would say, not wanting to fight that too hard. And Gary Thomas, as a result of that, gets the position from Hampton and moves up to 16th place. Oh, and now Kenzie van de Wacken in under some difficulty there, just sliding around. You can see the front left of the car just a little bit crumpled up, and I wonder if he's having to come to the pit lane as a result. Yeah, you definitely see the right front tire poking out from under the bodywork, and yeah, might be a technical flag, what we call a meatball flag, a black and orange flag. Of course, meatballs are not really that same shade of orange, but I don't blame people from having bad meatballs maybe in their time, and he is having to come into the pit lane indeed, so that is some mandatory repairs having to be done now. I wonder if Van de Wacken still has his spare car, or whether he has to commit to some time-costly repairs, and that is certainly a very, very sad thing for the Dutch driver, who was doing quite well, hovering around the top 10 positions, getting some nice screen time. I should mention that Kenzie, when we have these teams listed here, and he doesn't have a team listed, he's not driving for a team, and instead of none, it says none and a sad emoji. So he would want to be in a team, and maybe being in a team would have gotten him some hints and avoid those wall hits. So if somebody has free spots on their team, maybe Doc Bear, maybe Kingsman, maybe somebody else, then give him a call, give him a contact. He would love to be in a team. He'd just like to have some friends. Come on.
That is so funny. I saw that recently as well, and I was wondering
not funny,
if that
man,
was
he's
a
lonely.
typo or a technical issue, and then you said it was a sad emoji. I'm like, you're right, that is a sad emoji. I thought SDK was playing tricks on my mind. Daniel Thomas still chasing down Stevens, 0.6 of a second. The gap really hasn't gone anywhere really quickly. It's about 0.2 that Dan Stevens has on Daniel Thomas currently on that previous lap, and approaching the lap traffic now. We'll have to see who can negotiate the traffic better or worse. Currently, Kenny Bergen having another big mistake coming out of pit lane, and what a save, able to keep it on the tarmac, but a clattering with the wall on the way out is what resulted in that incident.
So you come into the pit lane because you have to repair your car. You have no fast repair remaining, so you spend some time repairing your car, and then you hit the wall on exiting the pit lane. That's not ideal, but that's also things that can happen so easily, because you're so anxious getting back onto the track. You just, oh man, I lost all that time. Okay, pit exit, here we go, and you clatter the wall, and you, well, I must say, great save, Kenzie, on that straight. As you said, what a shave. I believe that man has some gillettes and maybe some more equipment at home as well, because yeah, that was a great shave. Didn't even need no shaving cream for that one. That was just perfect on the first go. No cuts whatsoever. So Daniel Thomas then in second place, 0.6 of a second behind Dan Stevens, who is currently in the lead. So Stevens has inherited the lead, as we saw earlier on after the pit stops. Daniel Thomas, who was for a long time leading this race, just settling in behind him. And the difference in lap times, fastest laps between those guys, is 5 milliseconds. That's half a hundredth of a second. Last time around, Daniel Thomas being 0.3 faster in the draft. You can see Stevens, actually both of them having to deal with some traffic soon. I believe that would be Denny Proten, who is in 19th place, yet to be lapped, but is about to be, and that's Thomas also slapping the wall just a little bit on the forced elbow. I hope that's not too much damage to his car, because again, that concrete can be a cruel mistress.
Definitely unforgiving walls there as the leaders get by a back marker relatively easily coming through the kink. Now Daniel Thomas is a bit further back than I think he'd like to be on this opportunity. He was hoping that lap traffic give it, lap traffic take it away, more so the latter versus the former, and unfortunately not doing that on this occasion. Trying to go for a move coming into the final corner isn't going to work out, and that'll open the gap a little bit further as there's a big moment for that red car. Holy Toledo, almost took out Daniel Thomas there in a result, but narrowly avoiding disaster. Holy Toledo, Batman.
And Robin and all the other superheroes. Oh, by the way, I just want to comment on, yeah, that's, I believe that was Danny Proten spinning around and almost taking out Daniel Thomas, and just about to avoid the back end of that beautiful Ford, and you can indeed see Danny Proten just having a lot of front end damage, and you do it right after the pit lane entry too, so you can't come into the pit lane. Instead you're gonna have to drive at least one lap around with that damaged car, the front end of which is not looking like the factory intended whatsoever. It has some reminders from those Australian concrete walls. By the way, speaking of Batman, and we jump into just the right driver for this actually, Håkan Schött, because in Swedish, Batman is called a leather flap.
It's called a what?
Leather flap.
Leather flap.
Leather flap man, yes, because a bat is called a leather flap, and it's called a leather flap man.
Okay then. There's a tidbit of information I never thought I would gain during an endurance race, but there you go.
Never pass up an opportunity to make fun of the Swedes.
Never pass up an opportunity to learn. Let's just leave it at that. Oh man, Håkan Schött, the driver from Sweden, driving the 101 in the Camaro, currently running in 20th position, has had a roller coaster of a ride involved in a very early incident of this event. Has gained 2 positions on the good for the night. Driver with 1837 I rating, currently on lap 34, about to finish lap 35 here shortly, and best lap time being a 2:12 for this driver, and 2:12.6 being their last lap around. Is running pretty consistently, if I do say so. But here's Ray Partridge, who has had some significant damage for a significant amount of time. The Dog Bear team not looking very calm, cool, and collected on the racetrack. I wonder why, or I wonder if they will take their fast repair, or when they decide to come into the pit lane, because they've been running for the last pit lane. They came in on lap 9, and they've just been running ever since with this existing damage. Maybe they just want to make it to the checkered flag. What do you think, brother?
Well, I think he's going to have to come into the pit lane soon, maybe this time around. No, just letting the driver through, because the fuel tank, mind you, leaders, we saw them coming in at lap 28, so he can maybe come in at around lap... he can maybe make a 29, 30 lap stint, but he's going to have to, come into the pit lane shortly and then repair all that damage. But looks like for Ray Partridge, it is a race where he's not necessarily fighting for any positions anymore, rather he's just trying to make it to the finish. But I will commend his stamina and his determination to still drive the damaged car around, because a lot of people would have maybe come into the pit lane and just let it be there after losing your chances within the first 10 laps, but he's still continuing, and that's great for him. Meanwhile, we see Kenzie van der Wacken on the outside heading into the last corner, and that's against Lang. Let's see what happens there. Lang on the inside in that striped car. Van der Wacken then still in that black Mustang machine, a great looking car. They're fighting side by side into the hell corner, and finally Van der Wacken is able to get the pass done and raise his position up to 13. John Lang down into 14th, getting some minor bit of internet issues, but thankfully the connection, the information superhighway has come back.
Thank goodness for that, being able to be reconnected after the roller coaster ride that Kendi Van de Vucken has been on this entire race so far. A disconnect or a red flag for that driver would be the absolute worst thing to happen. Robert Northway again battling it out with the Fusion car out in front, looking for a anyway by coming into the chase for the 38th time of running so far, looking pretty good. And that is a beautiful NASCAR-esque livery that he's running. Looks to the inside line for the final corner, gets on the brakes heavy and fast, returns to the racing line though, and avoids that collision. The Fusion competition car out in front though is just driving a very clean race. And it looks like Robert Northway currently is just maybe driving with his heart on his sleeve just a little bit more than the Fusion car out in front. And that driver is going to be a Patelkis. Excuse me. I'm going to get that name
second
right.
time correct.
I'm going to get it right eventually. It may not be the first time round, but I will get Pateklis' name right eventually. I apologize to that driver. But Pateklis is driving such a fantastic race right now, 11 seconds back from Vavrovsky currently, but Pateklis is down one position on the grid for tonight.
Yeah, and I think Pateklis had a little bit of a wall tap, and he actually did have a little bit of a wall tap through the cutting there. So not immune to mistakes either, even if we've seen more from Northway behind heading through the chase. You said that coming through the chase for the 38th time. Well, I think he's also come through the chase a little bit aggressively for 38 times here, it seems, in this race. It's been twice or thrice throughout the event in reality. Let's not be too harsh on Northway, but once again charging and once again trying to dispatch the Latvian in front of him. It feels like we've been in this battle all the way through this race, and sorta it starts to take a life of its own at some point, where you see a slightly faster but more mistake-prone driver behind, and you see the consistency of Puteklis right in front. And when you can't get the past, and when you just have to fight and fight and fight it, and it sort of becomes larger than potentially the race itself. It becomes a true mano a mano when you're really learning about the guy in front of you. You're having a discussion without words. You're just having a discussion with your driving. And the more you battle with somebody else, the more you start to sort of lean into your habits and your strengths and learn about the weaknesses of the other and how you can potentially exploit those weaknesses. But when you see somebody who's just a tiny bit slower but doesn't make mistakes, it's the most difficult thing to try and pass, because you can't fool them. You can't use those usual tricks of trying to, let's say, make them outbrake themselves by showing your nose up to the inside, or applying pressure on them by being consistently faster. And when they are still able to pull away on a straight line, just a little bit like you see here, you don't have that easy avenue for an overtake. So you're gonna have to pull out the proverbial rabbits from your hats. But the thing about rabbits is that they bite. They might be nice and fluffy and very much disliked in Australia, apparently, and digging under fences and whatnot, but they also bite. So when you pull that rabbit under your hat, you have to make sure that it works, that it's a nice magic trick, that you're able to get past the other guy, not that you get bitten into a finger by a rabbit or something.
Yeah, you don't want to get your finger mistaken for a carrot or a piece of leaf or anything that rabbits would proverbially eat as well. Rabbits
Wires.
being very fluffy and very cute creatures, but they're like rodents. I mean, they're like a squirrel. You know, you want to pet a squirrel, but that thing has got claws like a mother. So you don't want to get in between a mother bear or a mother squirrel and its cubs or its little, what would you call a baby squirrel? Someone fact check me on this. Someone check. A nuisance?
No, yeah, well, of course the tails are a little bit different than squirrels in general, being rodents, proper rodents in that sense, can, well, they... Oh, they're all known as kittens, apparently, or kids. I didn't know that. I thought they would be called cubs or something. Speaking of funny things to call, do you know what they call a group of crows?
Crows?
Yeah,
murder.
crows.
A murder
Yes.
of crows.
So, and a group of ferrets is known as a business.
A business of ferrets.
Yeah, yeah. That is a true story too. So that's it. That is quite funny as Puteklis gets a little bit sideways, and we should maybe focus back on the racing here at hand on board with Robert Nordway once again. Getting through the hell corner nice and easy, and just going up the gears into 4th and then into 5th in that draft. And this is something that's also a unique experience with these cars, especially for a lot of the European drivers. I won't say all of the European drivers, because UK drives on the on the left-hand side of the road, and so did Sweden up until 1967. But I don't think any of our drivers are old enough to remember that. So, yeah, you see the steering wheel and the bench, and it's on the right-hand side of the car in this, and that just makes things a lot more difficult for those not accustomed to it, because you're accustomed to it either being on the left side or middle. If you're an open-wheeler guy, yeah, then it's in the middle. If you're driving GT cars, most of the GT cars, it's on the left. There are very few cars where it's actually on the right-hand side. And when you learn to drive, whether it's driving in real life, driving out on the street, or driving on a circuit, you are measuring everything from the left-hand side. Now, when it's on the right-hand side, it means that you can clatter that left side wall so easily on your first practice laps. You're just cutting it a little bit too much, because again, you're used to being on that side. You're used to being used to the gap between yourself and the edge of the car being shorter. And conversely, you are leaving too much of a room on the right-hand corners to the apex, because again, it is your subconscious playing tricks on you. It's your experience playing tricks on you. And so that's one thing that you have to also, an extra thing you have to get accustomed to, aside from all the other things here at the mountain and here with these cars.
Daniel Thomas just ran a 2:10.7. He's 1 second slower than Dan Stevens currently. And there's a move. Robert Northway just got by the Fusion car coming into the final corner. The move is finally done. You're absolutely right about that. It's been brewing for the past, I don't know, 30 laps or so, but the move from Robert Northway is finally executed cleanly.
Yeah, now I wonder if Puteklis has the better straight line speed, just gonna take it back here on the uphill. Let's see what happens here on the mountain straight. Heading up the hill, first over the slight hump, whoop, here you go, and then into the larger uphill portion. Is he gonna pull off a fake? No, he doesn't, and Robert Nordway able to keep that position. And now I'm very curious to see about the pace difference between these two guys. Was it just the draft and the chase keeping Nordway looking a little bit faster than Puteklis, his Latvian opponent? And here we see a replay, and oh, that's gonna be a mistake from Puteklis. He's so far ahead. Cutting to the first curb nicely, then just getting a little bit wide and having to collect himself over the marbles on the exit. And that means Robert Nordway just said, well, thank you very much. That was easy, much easier than I anticipated. So our speculation from a couple of laps ago is that it ended up in Puteklis making that mistake that we talked about so much that he doesn't make. But apparently nobody is immune to the mountain or the effects of the chase, sometimes removing your braking points from your memory, as tends to happen. Happens to everyone.
Absolutely. You know? Everybody can succumb to the mountains eventually. Anybody can make mistakes here at Mount Panorama. Like we talked about, we're at the halfway point of this event, or just breached it. It's 1 hour and 30 minutes of running so far, so expect another 1 hour and 30 minutes of running roughly of this event, and before we get to the checkered flag. But it's been a pleasure to take you from green to checkered up until this point, and the one thing that I'm still itching to hear about is that safety car. When will it be called? If and when it will be called? Should anything happen on the mountain pass, race control has that discretion to be able to pull that out. But unfortunately for us, we have seen green flag running for the past 42 laps or so.
Yeah, we have, and now Puteklis getting closer and closer, cutting turn one much nicer, and they are coming up to some traffic ahead of them as well. So that would be lap traffic, because they have about 13 seconds to the car ahead of Trevor Wawrowski. Doubtful they will catch up to the championship leader now. but they will have to deal with traffic which is not yielding here because they're not close enough on the mountain straight. So that might give Puteklis another opportunity, but it's also a sort of a threat if the driver in front is braking unexpectedly. These cars do have brake lights, but if you're running very close, somebody suddenly heavy braking can very much catch you unawares. Now on board Puteklis still, and you can just see those concrete walls looming on you, and from this angle you see what you don't often see from TV cameras, from outside perspectives, which is how bumpy this track really is. How those little elevation changes are not only present here on the skyline, but the surface is constantly undulating, and there's sharp bumps and there's longer, smoother bumps, and you have to kind of vary your line around, and the road is not really a smooth, constant surface. Rather, it's concaving, that the edges of the road are lower down, and that affects your racing line. Sometimes you get negative camber, which is something you don't want heading into the corner. So you're sort of, the racing line exists when the track is pointing away from you. And all of those, mind you, this is a public piece of road, something not many people know. This is a permanent racetrack, but it's also a public piece of road. Some people live alongside the Mount Panorama, and here they get the lapped move done nice and easy. I believe that was Danny Pro 10 on the 17th place that they just lapped, and 10 heading for another lap, and another lap that Northway survived ahead of Puteklis. And just seeing a spinner in the background actually.
Oh my goodness, yeah. A big spin from Michael Hogg coming into the final corner, and must have missed his brake marker as sends it into the barriers, but doesn't have too much damage, looking like he's running pretty well for the most part. The driver in 21st position, driving the 744 currently, and yeah, just not a lot of damage to that vehicle. Speaking of Mount Panorama's history, the original circuit layout was designed in the 1930s, and it was initially actually a public road. When it became a racetrack, it was modified, but still retains much of its original charm and character. Interestingly enough, it was originally used for motorcycle racing before road racing became the main focus, making it one of the few tracks with such diverse motorsport history.
Yeah, that is very, very interesting indeed. And it's just one of those places which looks crazy when you think about it, like building a racetrack in mountains like this. And it's the more impressive thing perhaps is that it has survived in active use for so long and has become such an icon of Australian motorsport and motorsport in Oceania at large, mentioning many Kiwi drivers coming in here to race, and it's just it has sort of taken a life of its own. I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that this is the Nürburgring of the South in a lot of ways. It has that same sort of cultural meaning. It's a different type of track, but they are also similar type of tracks in that both have a lot of elevation change, a lot of unique characteristics to them, known for their difficulty. And this is kind of like Nürburgring compressed in some ways, but also different in a lot of other ways. I don't know if they have track days here at Mount Panorama. If they do, send me an invite. Sure, why not? I would love to try and tackle this track and then spend the rest of my life paying for the car.
Yeah, send me one as well. I'd really appreciate the invitation to Australia and a day around Mount Panorama. But if you're interested in how Mount Panorama was formed, we can give thanks to one person and the pioneering vision of the Bathurst Mayor, Martin Griffin. He was enthused by racing at the Vale and Peel circuits, which used public roads in and around the city during the 1930s. So Griffin hatched plans for this new road course, and an iconic one, to say the least, and has stood the test of time for sure. Running since the 1930s, it is one of the oldest racetracks in history. And of course, the program of events has expanded in recent years to not only take on the Bathurst 1000, but also the Bathurst 12 Hours for international GT cars, the 6-hour production car Enduro, Challenge Bathurst for all corners, and the Bathurst International for the Australian Racing Group's roster of categories. Super phenomenal that they run so many different categories here and provide so much exciting racing. It is definitely one of Australia's staple events.
Yeah, and one of the things I've been watching on board with our race leader, Daniel Stevens, and it's a great watch, really. I was just watching him through the forest elbow, getting so close to the wall. And sometimes in racing, and some people say it's a myth. Some people will right away say it's a myth, it doesn't happen, that can't happen, but I have felt it myself. You get into this sort of a flow state, which means that you're not thinking. You're just driving, and you sort of wake up like after half an hour or so, whenever something happens, or you get waken up by your teammate, or a radio call, or something unusual happening. And you have very little recollection of that driving, but you enter such a flow state that you're just lapping in faster than you would ever lap conscious, or at least more consistently. It just sort of occupies your brain entirely, and you're able to enter a full focus. And it's only happened a couple of times, and I wish I knew how to get into that state. And I think every driver would wish they knew how to get into that flow state. But once you do get into that, it just becomes such a great thing to witness, watching back the lap times being so consistent. The reason I mentioned that is that Daniel Stevens might soon be entering that very flow state. Just judging by the way he's driving, he's going around the track, and seeing him on board. Now that is a mirrored view on the bottom right, so his camera is a little bit mirrored in case you are confused, but you can just see he's driving, and there's nothing extra happening. None whatsoever. It's smooth racing line, smooth movement, smooth inputs, gear changes at the same spot each and every time. And here we see the camera actually being of the correct orientation, and even heading to the long Conrod straight down the hill, you can just see how smooth he is, not sliding the rear tires at all whatsoever, dealing with that lapped car, not too worried about the LED lights flashing or anything else, just seeing it. It's just him and the car and the track, and a major serious race which is over halfway complete, that he is currently in the lead of, perhaps against most if not all odds, because once again the man has 1700 iRating, but he is kicking the high knees of men with 6000, men with 5000, men with major serious wins. And here we see the lap time just last time around, putting in a 208.945. Mind you, the fastest one is 208.943. And he had to deal with lap traffic. So yeah, certainly putting on a performance of a lifetime is Daniel Stevens.
Yeah, Daniel Stevens, can't say enough about the driver in the lead of this event right now, leading by nearly 3 seconds currently. He's doing a phenomenal job, absolutely driving out of his skin. And you talk about that trance-like state of being a sim racer, and it's almost meditative at some point, right? Where you're just driving along, you're no longer checking your brake markers, you're no longer just worried about, okay, here's where I brake, here's where I turn in. It's all based on feel at that point in time. You're just ticking away laps like a clock, and lap after lap, the clock keeps ticking forward, and you just keep on driving. One little brief kiss of the wall, and you're woken up from that trance-like state, and you're back to dialing it back a percent or two, checking your brake markers, looking in your rear view mirror, trying to negotiate things with traffic. But Daniel Stevens and Daniel Thomas have been doing a great job commanding this race so far. P1 and P2, Feligny down into third place by 10 seconds or so, has lost touch with the leaders currently. The driver from Italy, who's trampling all over this Australian soil currently, has done a great job of keeping in touch with the leaders, but not so much as of late. Currently 10.5 seconds back and running in P3, but wishes that he was still in touch with Daniel Thomas in P2. Dan Stevens is up 2 positions on the good for the night, started in third, now in first. Daniel Thomas has lost 1, started in 1, now down in 2. Feligny started in second, now down in third. Biggest gainers of the night will be Lorenzetti with 3 positions gained, running in 9th position, driving a Ford Mustang. The driver from Italy as well, doing a great job in 9th position. Currently, their fast lap is going to be a 210.255. Last lap being a 210.359. So running very consistent laps, potentially in that trance-like state that you discussed just a moment ago.
Yeah, and speaking of Stevens, just briefly, another thing I want to mention, he has 99 starts here in this series. And so this is not only race in his home turf, but also this is his 100 serious start here in majors, I do believe. And I don't want to throw the commentator's curse at him. I don't want to, you don't say shutout before the game is actually complete, or else you jinx the goalie. And in the same way, you don't say this is gonna be a great result for him before he actually gets to the checkered flag and everything is complete. But in his 100 race start, what a way it would be to celebrate than having a victory. Now, he does have one victory in his major series career. It wouldn't be his maiden one, but the previous one is from season 2020, when he was racing in the international series in the pro division. Of course, he's been racing in the pro division since the inaugural season, and so it's been 5 years since his last race win here.
Wow,
and certainly would be a surprise. Yeah.
Wowza. But that goes to show you how fierce the competition here is in the major series, that we have such heavy hitters and drivers with such crazy iRating as 5K, 6K and above. But that means that anybody can compete at this level. We have drivers down in the 1400s, 1100s as well that are still driving their abilities and showcasing what they're possibly made of here. But it's just phenomenal to see that we have such a diverse group of individuals competing in the major series. And let's talk about the major series a little bit. It's not a competition that really is about driving one class of car around a set of tracks that you typically see. This is a competition that is quite fierce and challenging because it'll challenge you in ways that you've never been challenged before. It is a series that has you drive different cars around different tracks that you wouldn't typically see. And the next event is surely going to be a phenomenal finale, that's for sure. But going from V8 supercars to Formula cars, that's not going to be an easy transition for these guys. And these challenging conditions are going to mean much more going forward when the drivers go ahead and touch their feet down. I believe that will be Fuji. We can obviously check that very quickly, but Suzuka for the finale of the race. Excuse me, I knew it was a Japanese track. I knew it was. I just got the Japanese track wrong. Headed to Suzuka for the finale of this championship series. It'll be a humdinger of a time, but I'm curious what goes through the drivers' heads when they go, okay, V8 supercars, I've been practicing this for an entire week. Now it's time for me to go ahead and hop into a Formula or an open wheeler and then drive around a completely set of different parameters and challenge themselves again in their mental fortitude to be able to switch that up. It's one thing to switch over your wheels, maybe switch over your driving setup a little bit here or there, but really challenging what you're capable of being able to produce. I'll tell you what, I can't go from an open wheeler to a cockpit car very easily. I have a hard time going from GT cars to TCR cars, and my iRating will prove that very handily because I am down in the, I won't even admit what my iRating is. Let's just not even talk about it.
Yeah, so I could look that up, but I don't want to be cruel right now. And again, well, Stevens is proving that iRating isn't the end all be all, but I think most of when you try to jump from one car to another, most of it comes down to really the first times you have experience with different sort of cars. So for myself, personally speaking, it kind of happens quickly when I'm able to find out whether I can drive a car or I can't drive a car, the certain characteristics of it. You need only a few laps to get sort of near your limit, and then that last full second or so will come with time and grinding and practice, and then you find that, okay, a tenth more and a tenth more and a tenth more, and it becomes even more difficult. So it's really, the curve is really steep from the get-go, where I can be like 1 second off the pace within like 5 laps or so, unless it's a new track. If it's a new track, then it takes a little bit more because you have to learn the ins and outs of the circuit. But really what helps is having experience, having sort of already that groove with different types of cars, and then you just have to quickly unlearn the habits from the previous car and get used to the next one. And you sort of have a feeling, for example, when you jump on, you mentioned an example from an open wheeler. So I used to drive a lot of Lotus 79. Some people may know me from that series. I used to drive it a lot. I wish I had time to do that, but alas, I'm stuck here. So, so Lotus 79. And I love to be here. Love that GSRC has brought us in to commentate this race. It's an awesome series. I really appreciate the majors. One of the premier series in sim racing in terms of just the challenge of competition. But yeah, so jumping from Lotus 79 to say a GT3 car, for example, it's wildly different. Because with a GT3, the braking is a lot different, the cornering grip is a lot different, the weight of the car is a lot different, and you have to take into consideration certain factors that you don't have to with a Lotus 79. Or if you're jumping from, say, a Super Formula car to a different type of sort of aero car, but a prototype. Like last night we were watching another endurance race, and it's that SimRacing Republic race. And in there, I know the Havu guys, some of them competed in the Finnish Championship land final last weekend, and they did so with the Super Formula. And then 1 week later, they sort of have to move from the Super Formula into an LMP2 or an LMP3, and even that can be a drastic difference due to the way the car handles, due to the way it doesn't sort of sharply turn the corner, but rather you have to wait a bit. You have less power and you have less cornering grip, less aerodynamics at your use, and it's also a different type of race. Because it's longer, it's an endurance race with pit stops. And speaking of which, we do get some pit stops with the entire leading quartet, make that a quintet, make that a sextet coming into the pit lane. I'm not sure sextet is a word, but went into it already.
Well, we're going to call it as we see it. The first 6 coming down pit road currently. Batten needs to win this race if he has any chance at Vavrovsky coming into the final race, but it's not looking likely currently. Vavrovsky running in 6th position, potentially even a DNF for Vavrovsky. Not that we want it to happen, but it could help Batten's chances at finishing out in P1 of this championship. Looking at Daniel Thomas now, he is now in the lead in front of Stevens, and that is a change for the lead coming down into the pit road. And there's about a 7/10 difference between the pit time from the looks of it, but their time down pit road was about exactly the same.
Yeah, so that's a quicker pit stop 10 from him, and meaning the leading duo is right up together, and also means Thomas is actually now ahead of Dan Stevens, as you mentioned. So here we go, 10:40, what will most likely be the final stint of this race between these two drivers, and they will have to battle it out. And we do get a yellow. We do get a full course caution at this moment in time. So the race control making the decision to throw in the safety car. Now,
very interesting timing as well. After the first 6 decide to take their pit stop. Had that happened just a few moments before, we would have had the first 6 pitting under yellow flag conditions. And let's look at a replay. What happened to the pit stop here, and it looks like Daniel Stevens may have missed his pit stop mark, and that's what caused the issue. Onto the brakes there, and does he have to pump it into reverse? He does have to reverse it a little bit, and that's what caused him to lose the lead of the race.
So that's such an easy thing to do. The pit lane, when you're in used tires, you're sort of thinking, okay, you're braking down from what, 80 k's an hour, 60 k's an hour, not much speed at all. But it can be very difficult still, because that pit lane doesn't have the grip that the racetrack does have. It can be a little bit bumpy. And here you can see the pit lane entry from Daniel Stevens. Now, last time around, we saw his opponent just making a little mishap there, and Stevens this time getting a bit anxious on the pit entry, or maybe little bit too conservative rather. and then trying to win back some time, maybe breaking to the pit stall and missing it just by an inch, and it was heartbreaking to see, because he didn't have to reverse far at all. It was maybe half a meter, but that's enough for the crew to say, no, you're too far forward, settle back, get into your pit box, and then we can start operating on you. And meanwhile, as a driver, you're gonna be, come on guys, move half a meter forward. It's not that difficult, but they can't do that.
Incident happening as the yellow took place, coming down the main straight into the first corner. The driver in 21st runs straight off and kisses the
Vanishing
barrier
point
there. Yeah, that is a warp to pit lane for Ray Partridge there, and happened right as the yellow came out. And now the leaders are picked up by the safety car, and let's see how long this safety car period will end up lasting. And this is going to be very interesting for the race restart. Do you think that we're going to get a wave around lap, or is this just going to be a safety car to bunch up the field?
Will be interesting to see what the race control decides now. There will be no wave buys, actually. We just received information. There will be no wave buys for these drivers, and no so-called lucky dog either. So even in the first car who is lap down will not get that lap back. So as a result of that, we just have this safety car period. And we are hearing now word from the comments and from the race information that they will have been given a 2-lap warning before the safety car arrives. So that's also the reason, 2-minute warning rather than 2 laps. So 1-lap warning, 2-minute warning. And before the pace car arrives, and that's most likely also why you saw the leading pack and pretty much most everyone pitting when they did. So that gives us some more information. Thank you very much for that. I'm sure it was down somewhere, but I'm bad at reading.
I don't read so good.
No, I don't read so good. So yeah, either way, we are in the yellow flag period, and this gives us ample time to speculate on the later portions of this race. Now, who does this benefit most of all? To me, really, it's something that, well, obviously Dan Thomas is going to be the first name I bring up, because he was able to be faster in the pit stop, regaining the lead of the race, and you're able to, as such, control the race from that leading position. You're able to decide after the pace car comes off exactly when do you hit the accelerator, get yourself maybe half a second of advantage, and also to just maybe hope that Foligny or Lorenzetti or Batten or somebody will be able to challenge Stevens for that second place. As a leader in this situation, what you're trying to really make happen is that the drivers behind you start battling rather than everybody battling you into turn number 1 or turn number 2. Conversely, if that doesn't happen and if Stevens is able to get away cleanly, you are very much under threat on that first uphill on Conrad Straight as you head towards turn number 2 and towards cutting and the mountain section. Because it's when you get that challenge to the inside, then it's very, very difficult to try and fend off.
Where do you really try to go to make your overtaking move? I know we have a couple of corners here that are prime for overtaking. You set one up for turn 3, the Corey Bend, after you try to go for a move at Hell Corner, but there's no overtaking to be had at the cutting Griffin's Mount all the way down to Skyline. But maybe the Forest Elbow, making one happen at the Chase, the final chicane before you get down to the end. And it looks like the lights have gone off in the safety car currently, and we are going to be able to go green the next lap of running. But where do you really want to make these overtakes happen? If you were Dan Stevens of Middle Finger Racing and with an iRating of 1764, but starting your 100th race here at Bathurst Mount Panorama, for the majors, where do you want to make this move stick on someone who's got an iRating of 6K, and how do you make it work?
Well, what you do is you first of all try to make sure that you don't get past yourself into Hell Corner. Then you get a great run up the mountain straight. You look to the inside at Griffin's Bend, but that's going to be blocked off if you're close enough, because Dan Thomas is gonna hold on to the inside line. You just can't really make a move around the outside into Griffin's Bend unless the guy makes a mistake. Then you follow through cutting, Quarry Corner, Reed Park, Sulman Park, really McPhillamy, all the way through McPhillamy as close as you can. Then you absolutely send it down the inside at Skyline. You potentially cut through the track, and then you serve the slowdown through the dipper when the guy can't overtake anyway. So...
and that's a lap around that panorama.
Did you ask where do you do it if you're Stevens or where do you do it if you're me?
Oh, goodness gracious. Well, I already know what your I rating is, so I know you're not that incompetent to try to make a move stick at Skyline, that's for sure. Although we could see some moves being made here in the early stages of this event. Of course, it looks like Foligny is back behind the back marker currently, so it shouldn't be too easy or too hard for him to get by, but the cars in the lead of this race, Daniel Thomas and Dan Stevens, will have that back marker as protection as they attack each other going into corner number 1. As you can see in the top right hand corner of your screen, we have the drivers going fast around the track trying to catch up after they took their pit stops here. And I'm trying to see who this benefits. John Lang still only taking 1 pit stop for this event, and I believe he should have taken this opportunity to go down pit road one more time.
Yeah, they couldn't come to the pit lane on the first lap of the caution period, but they could have done so on the previous time around, I do believe. So a different strategy then from Lang. Not sure if it's the fastest one. I'm gonna go ahead and say no, it ain't. But in any case, we are soon getting back to racing. And on a more serious answer, I think Stevens, well, get a great run through Hell Corner, try and put some pressure on Griffin's Bend. Mind you, these guys are with cold tires too. So, and a full tank of fuel, and that's gonna extend their braking distances. So it's very easy for a driver defending to sort of brake at their usual braking point to Griffin's Bend, turn number 2. And as a result of that, just, you know, go a little bit wide, and then you can squeak your way through the inside and say thank you very much. I wonder if that's what Stevens is trying to do. The next best chance, of course, is down from Forest Elbow onto the Condor Straight and towards the chase. That's going to be the next real opportunity. Though you can be a cheeky one and actually trying to make a move stick after Skyline into the dipper. That sometimes happens if the guy is a little bit, if you notice the guy is a little bit conservative ahead of you into that corner, you just send it up to the inside, make them essentially yield and catch them off guard. You can absolutely do that. Just make sure you don't have contact. Easier said than done. But here we go. We are getting to get racing, and we'll just see what happens here between Thomas Stevens and Foligny and everybody else.
And everybody else as well. But now it is green, green, green running, heading down towards corner number 1. It'll be Thomas and Stevens leading the pack currently. And then there's going to be a battle further back, and that'll be Foligny actually losing touch. Oh, and there is a huge moment coming out of corner number 1. And
that's Lorenzetti spinning out in the back.
Oh no, tumbling down the order into the back of the pack. Lorenzetti going worse for wear. Foligny got the worst run possible out of Helt's corner, but he did survive. Bobrovsky looking to the inside line on the other Ford Mustang, and Camaro, but loses out 2 positions on the good, and headlights are flashing to the back markers on this restart, trying to get by and negotiate them cleanly here.
Yeah, he lost 3 positions in the start, you can see, and that's one of the lapped cars as well, momentarily getting ahead of him and then losing out the position, or rather giving away the position immediately. And I do believe that then would have been our Dutch entry, Kenzie van der Wacker, unless I was much mistaken there, and they are very close for 16th place as well here in this battle. You can see Danny Proten just having to fend off Wayne Hutchison behind him, I do believe that is. So yeah, Danny Pro, who is a lap down on the leaders, having to fend off other guys. But yeah, we saw a couple of black flags as well on the restart being given out, and we'll get a note of those later on, but they didn't affect the leaders of this race. Speaking of leaders, I'm looking at gaps, and Daniel Stevens is very close indeed, heading towards the chase.
This is going to be very exciting. A 10th separating the two leaders right now. They did escape with their lives on that restart, but now Dan Stevens really trying to close down the gap on his opponent of Dan Thomas out in the lead of this race. We saw the positions change or become inverse through the pit stop cycle. A little mistake from Daniel Stevens is what caused that incident to take place, but now he is on the up and up on P2, trying to challenge for P1. Feligny is counting his blessings right now in P3 as the gap that was insurmountable has come down to just half a second.
Yeah, and we remember how quick Feligny was early on. He was in that lead battle, mind you. He was in second place to begin this race. He was quick in qualifying. Oh, and Stevens is looking to send it to the inside, maybe trying to sell a dummy to Thomas, which is what we were talking about during the safety car period. That is one of the ways that you can certainly overtake here. You make the guy look at their mirrors and miss their braking spot. It's what Belval did so effectively earlier on in this race and was able to get the position done. However, Daniel Thomas just a little bit too wily of an old fox to fall into such a trap. But Daniel Stevens, in his 100th race, his previous race win from 5 years ago, will be desperate to get that win done, and once again just a great pace into McPhillamy Park. But it's not an overtaking opportunity. Norris here into the skyline. Even if you want to be a little bit cheeky, you can do it with a Skip Baba, but you certainly can't do it with these supercars. They're just so much bigger, so much heavier, so much wider as well, and it looks to be the widest supercar around that is in front of Daniel Stevens right about now. Let's see what he can do here. Get a good run off the throttle. Don't hit the wall. That he did not do. And again, down into the Conrod Straight, down towards the chase, up this hill. This is where you really feel the draft coming on. Up the hill, 10 down, he moves on to the inside, into the kink, but doesn't have the overlap, doesn't have the room, and will have to settle in behind Dan Thomas once again. Meanwhile, for third place, it is Feligny and Garen Batten from Australia who tries to get onto the podium in front of his home crowd.
Garen Batten, again, a phenomenal drive out of him. Best lap for Garen was a 209.281 currently, and he's just half a second back from P3 and that podium coveted position. Currently, he is being under threat from Edward Shelley in P5, and that driver also half a second back. But we've got this amazing pack battle that's just kind of settling in with 27 to go in this race. 2:10 separates the leaders currently. Daniel Stevens looks to the inside line. Is he fully alongside? I don't think so at the cutting, or excuse me, at the Corey Bend.
Yeah, but once again, selling those dummies and most importantly, keeping the pressure on Daniel Thomas. Each time he moves alongside, he's showing that, hey mate, I do have the pace to stick right with you. I do have the pace to potentially sell a move here, and making Thomas second guess, okay, is he gonna send it? Is he gonna send it alongside me? Do I have to brake later? Can I brake right on my marker? And not allowing him to get away either. So that's very important here for Stevens to try and keep the pressure on, to not allow the leader to come away. And look at that, Stevens even looking to the inside at Skyline, even taking a different racing line there, just showcasing his nose. So, well, Daniel Stevens then very much desperate to get that move done. Each and every corner he's applying pressure, and here he's looking to take a better exit of Forest's Elbow. But I don't think that works out. I don't think that different line is that much better. You just lose a little bit more time on the entry of the corner, and even if you claw some back on the exit, you're putting yourself under pressure from cars behind as well. But you still have to try it out. And certainly Stevens is unloading, not only looking into that bag of tricks, but also trying to pull out that proverbial rabbit, and just so close to the rear quarter panel. Man, this is exhilarating.
Super exciting stuff here. The battle for the lead is very much still on, but Daniel Stevens, the driver in second place, trying to do anything he possibly can to shake up Dan Thomas, currently running in P1, looking to the alternate lines, looking for clean air, trying to just sell the dummies wherever he can, and it's not working out in his favor. Last laps around 2:11.1, 2:11.0 for the leaders of this event. Jeff does come down pit road in the number 30 car, the Dog Bear team, and that'll be his third of the night.
Yeah, Bannon at the bottom of your screen, trying to make a move on Fuligny, and there's contact, but Fuligny being able to save that really well. I don't think he hit the wall, but he certainly hit two positions of loss effectively, with Baron and Shelley getting by the Italian driver as well. That was a very late move at Baron. I was watching them come up the mountain straight on towards turn number 2, and that just... a little bit too far back, I think, for Garen Batten. He was able to get alongside, but then just hit the rear quarter panel on the entry and trying to force his way down the inside. Now, if you do get that inside line, then you're pretty much done and good for an overtake, and that's certainly what he was trying to do. But, yeah, wow.
Playing chess at 200 miles an hour going into Quarry Bend did not work out in the favor for Fuligny. Unfortunate circumstances there resulted in contact and sent him further down the order than I think he would like. The driver was in third place, now resting his head in fifth place for the number 5, aptly put. And now looking at the battle for the lead yet again, coming down the Conrad straight, the very long straightaway. The drivers give a little brief touch of the brakes through the kink to settle the car down a little bit before they hit the bumps into the chase now. And it looks like Daniel Stevens is not as close as he was just a lap ago, maybe dialed back a percent or two, realize that there is 26 remaining left to go in this event. Plenty of time for him to close down and wait for a mistake, because Dan Thomas has been running very well, but hasn't been the most consistent as Fuligny gets by Pateklis, excuse me, in the triple six. Oh, enter pit lane, Fuligny does.
Yeah, he's into the pit lane. That's why he was able to get the overlap done on the entry to the pit lane briefly, but he has to come into the pits potentially to repair some damage. And here we see a replay of what happened for that third position, which was, and look at Baron just making that move to the inside, a very daring move, but he didn't really have that overlap. Now, of course, he was alongside because that contact came to the side of the car, but that was a late move, and I don't think you could just expect Fuligny to give away the inside for free in that one. And Garen Batten just ending up hitting his rear quarter panel and sending Fuligny spinning and sending Fuligny for an extra pit stop as well. So here you see Claude Belwall then in 9th place behind Robert Northway, that is indeed. And great battle there, but we gotta mention as well for the championship, because this race was indeed potentially the championship decider unless Garen Batten is able to win, but now it has been decided, or actually it's been decided since Trevor Wawrowski made it through over halfway of the race. He was able to secure enough points that he is indeed the Major Series European champion for year 2025.
Amazing job for Wawrowski there to be able to clinch the championship with one race left to go even. Just a phenomenal run from him this entire series up until this point. Mr. Consistency now in 6th place, and he's 0.3 back from Pateklis currently. Oh, and Garen Batten under threat and threatening at the same time. The back marker ahead of him. Or is that Shelley in front? No, Shelley's behind, excuse me. Stevens in front of him, and Stevens seemingly having a mistake. I thought that was a back marker. They were running so close to each other, but no, that is the 2nd place car running of Stevens. Looking at the lap times currently, the 2nd place car ran a 2:11.6 that last time around compared to 2:11.5s and 2:11.3s from Edward Shelley.
Yeah, and there was John Lang coming into the pit lane who didn't do that pit stop during the safety car period. And here is Garen Batten. Will he try to do that same move? Yes, he's looking to the inside and Stevens braking later. But Stevens just out-braking himself and not only losing one position, but potentially, yeah, he's losing two, because that was Shelley being able to get by as well. And that I was talking about it. That is one of the ways that you can try and make a move here. You essentially send it down to the inside and you force the car in front of you to make a decision. Does he turn into the corner and risk an incident just like what happened earlier on with Foligny? Or does he try and brake later, outbrake himself, and then lose the racing line? And in that corner, it means you don't only lose one position, but in a queue like that, you lose two. And Garen Batten showcasing his experience from the mountain, the Australian driver, all the way up to second place now. And it's up to him to try and catch Daniel Thomas here in the lead of this race, pulling what is now Ed Shelley and 10 Dan Stevens along.
Garen Batten might have the pace to be able to pull off P2. I don't think he has the pace to catch up to Daniel Thomas out in P1 currently. He's 3/10 down and will have some monumental work in front of him if he wants to clinch that title and gain those positions. And man, oh man, he's looking to the inside line, Garen Batten does, and he does inherit the lead just to prove me wrong with a big mistake from Dan Thomas. And going into the chase, it'll be a change for the lead. And that's the commentator's curse gone the right way for once.
Yeah, so Batten, he is out of the championship hunt. But he is, with Wawrowski clinching the title, he has no pressure anymore. And this means he is able to pull off those lap times. But yeah, that looked quite easy. He's able to certainly hold on to that pace and showcasing why he is one of the premier drivers in the championship. But my question is, where was that pace earlier on? Where was Garen Batten and this driving earlier on in this event? Now look at this, here comes Ed Shelley passing Thomas too. So that's Thomas losing two positions in a very short order. Now is Thomas carrying damage, or is he potentially having to fuel save a little bit more than he wanted? Did he make a miscalculation in the pit lane and fueled up some too little and now has to save up? We just have to wait and see. But Batten was able to get by quite easily, and so was Shelley. And we remember that this quartet was able to stick right together from the early parts when Thomas was leading. So I wonder, it's gonna stretch out now. It certainly has, with Batten pulling out 1.2 seconds over the course of this lap over Ed Shelley, who's now second. 1.8, make that 2 over Dan Thomas.
Pretty amazing stuff here. Daniel Thomas did take the shortest pit stop of the drivers in the lead of this race. Wawrowski with a 38.1 and Daniel Thomas with a 39.47. We did see that when the pit stops took place. I wonder now, you're absolutely right, if he is managing to fuel save just a little bit to make it to the end now. And it looks like Dan Stevens is not fuel saving currently. He's just driving his own race. All drivers on the front six did pit on lap number 49. So they're all running the same strategy to the end of this event currently.
Yeah, but that sounded like to me that he had to get off a little bit onto the kink, and then he was sort of coasting off the throttle into the chase as well. So it didn't look as easy to him as it looked for Batten and for Shelley ahead. Mind you, those passes came here after turn number 1 from Hell's Corner, getting that great run up the mountain straight. So let's see now, Stevens, he has 0.6 of a second ahead of him to Dan Thomas, who once again was able to let by Batten and Shelley so easily, or had to let by Batten and Shelley so easily, but Stevens isn't in as fast of a pace. Yeah, you can see here right away. So Thomas is either increasing his pace, has done enough fuel saving, but also one thing I want to mention is that if he has to fuel save, he has to do so very aggressively, because otherwise you would want to be right behind Batten and Shelley. at this point in time. You would want to use that draft for fuel saving. So get right up to the bumper and then lift and coast into the corner, not leave like a 1 second gap. So it does seem very odd that both of these guys are being slower at this early point. We'll just have to keep our eye on the situation with that and with Shelley now potentially on a bit of a runaway. And that's also Wawrowski catching up to this, what used to be the leading duo, Thomas and Stevens, now being caught up by Trevor Wawrowski, who's just half a second behind.
You're absolutely right. That was exactly what I was going to say next, was Wawrowski just 0.8 back currently, but closing down the gap on the leaders of this event. But Batten has led this race for an entire lap currently over Shelley, Thomas, Stevens, Wawrowski in 5th place. He's doing a great job, opening up that gap to 1.8 seconds. Daniel Thomas back down 2 seconds to Shelley currently, and that's not looking good for himself. Daniel Stevens. I gotta get the Dans right, I apologize. And there's a big moment for Daniel Stevens, and he licks the stamp and sends it on himself going into the final chicane. Trevor Wawrowski getting a little squirrely whirly here on the brakes now, coming into the final corner, trying to give it up to Dan Stevens. And does he get the switchback engaged? I believe he does get the switchback engaged. They're going to go side by side down the front straightaway into Hell's Corner. It will be Wawrowski upgraded into P4 currently.
Yeah, and meanwhile, Uldis Puteklis, you saw him in the background coming into the pit lane, which is a weird timing for him. So I don't see that being a scheduled stop. And I do believe he was one of those drivers who pitted just before the pace car too, so wonder what's the reasoning behind Puteklis. Is it under fueling too? Maybe he's wanting to get some new tires, maybe some damage, something else. Either way, Puteklis is into the pits, and here we see then Garen Batten in the lead of this event, now pulling out 2 seconds ahead of Ed Shelley in the 2nd place. Let's just see the lap times. A 209.7 from Garen, a 210.5 rounding up for Ed Shelley, and then Daniel Thomas in 3rd place at 211.2. That was Wawrowski then getting past Stevens last time around, so Wawrowski up to 4th and up 3 positions from where he started, and Stevens now down into 5th place. Then Stevens, who was looking for that 2nd race win in his 100th start, is now dropping like a stone through the standings. Now Wawrowski versus Thomas is gonna get interesting soon, and this later portion of the race certainly throwing us a lot of surprises, with the gap between Shelley and Thomas now up to 3 seconds as we're on board Garen.
It really is interesting how the race has evolved from being an endurance race and transforming itself pretty much at the 3/4 waypoint of this event, and trying to make it to the end of this event on that one pit stop strategy. A couple drivers taking an additional pit stop to make it to the end. Puteklis being one of those drivers that decided to come in for the extra time to make sure that he has enough fuel to make it to the end. But with 20 laps to go, it'll be very interesting to see how this all shakes up. Feligny getting past Thomas now in the background, or is that an entrance down to pit road? No, it's not. That is a battle that has settled itself on the racetrack.
So yeah, I'm just wondering if those guys came into the pit lane at lap number 53 out of 81 and 28 laps, and their first stint, if I remember correctly, it was at 26 or 28, because I remember saying that it would mean the next stop is at lap 56 if they make 28 lap stints. So yeah, they should be able to make it on fuel, but I'm looking at pit stop times here. And these are total lane times, mind you, so there might be some difference between that and the actual pit time. The pit stop times for our leading duo, Garen Batten and Ed Shelley, they were around the 42-second mark, 41.97 and 42.85 respectively. Then Daniel Thomas in 3rd place at the moment, 39.4, and Trevor Wawrowski at 38.1. Now Dan Stevens did have a longer pit stop, but he also missed his pit stall, so that's the reason his pit stop was a little bit longer. And I wonder if Daniel Thomas then, with that shorter pit stop, and Dan Stevens as well, with missing his pit stall did underfuel just a little bit and are having to pay the price right now.
It's going to be one of the longer stints that they've had to run, especially when we look at them running around 33 laps or 30 laps or so. Right after that, the safety car was called. But man, oh man, this is going to be very exciting and potentially a change for the lead again, as Garen Batten seemingly just pushing his heart out right now and just driving flat out, while we definitely see some fuel saving going on from Dan Stevens and Daniel Thomas, both drivers running further down the order than I think they'd like on that restart. Edward Shelley giving us a nice little drifto through the final corner.
Yeah, Ed Shelley with that beautiful, beautiful machine. Just, I love that. I mean, yeah, it might be a white base, which you think is boring, but then you have that fusion livery with the darker shade of somewhat shiny red, and you combine that with the gold, and you create what is so, so beautiful to see. It's so fresh looking too, because it's primary white, it's not too dark, and then you have those accent colors both popping out so beautifully. It's a great job by whoever painted that fusion livery. It might be somewhat simple looking in terms of like the idea, but it works so, so well. I love it. I love a good livery. I always geek out about them. Mainly because I can, for the life of me, never design one myself.
It's not that hard to design a livery. It takes skill and time to make it look good, though.
Yeah, exactly.
Being a driver that's made some liveries myself, it's mostly cartoon characters and stickers, things of that nature, but the class that it takes to compete at this level and make a great looking livery, you really need an artist, a designer, a livery creator, someone who specializes in doing some of this stuff. And I'm sure you can find a livery creator on Fiverr, sure, whatever, but the real professionals will charge you top dollar for a great looking livery and apply it across multiple cars. I'm also very much a livery person. One of the things I love about iRacing is the variety of the cars that you get to see here. Is that an Indian motorcycle livery that we're looking at?
Yes.
It is an Indian motorcycle livery for Daniel Stevens, the driver from New Zealand.
I mean, yeah, once again, it's a monochromatic livery. You get black and you get white. But when you do it right, it works so well with these cars. And a lot of things about liveries is that how well they pop out from the rest of the field too. Like how it stands out effectively. You mentioned that NASCAR style livery. Can't remember who it was on. I think it might have been one of the guys Bobrovsky was battling for a long time. Maybe Puteklis? Not sure.
Northway?
But yeah. Yeah, Northway. I think Robert Northway actually had that NASCAR style livery. So that pops out so well from a field of supercars. Meanwhile, we have some racing too alongside the liveries, because these liveries, they tend to go fast around the track, and they tend to go fast around some other liveries, which are then taken around the track by the drivers who you are competing against. And this particular competition is between Josh Hampton and David H. Baker. So it is a Brit against an American, and right now the Baker, the American, is the one doing chasing down to the hell corner, and if he can get a great exit from there, well, we can see all sorts of opportunities that will present themselves come into Griffin's Bend, turn number 2, which is coming up next here.
Speaking of Robert Northway, he is shaking and baking currently, gaining 2 positions on the good. But back to this battle, a look at the stamp and ascend going into the quarry. Ben from David Baker, the driver who did the attacking, was able to make that move stick relatively easily as he looked to the inside line and he hugged that curb on the inside, able to slingshot himself to the outside line there, and did so successfully. David Baker getting one done on Hampton.
Yeah, and that was easy. Might have been quite up his alley, this Australian racing, but call him Sherlock Holmes because that was certainly in the Baker Street.
That reference went right over my head. I'm sorry.
No more. Sherlock Holmes references? Really? Okay. We need to get you all to do some reading. There's some required reading you all need to do on this one.
Man.
Well, leave some Baker Street anyway. So David Baker there in 10th place in number 33, and he has now 1.7 seconds of a gap between himself and Gary Thomas in 9 in that number 7. And David Baker also one of the Chevys there in our field. In fact, second amongst the Chevys, with Robert Northway currently taking the GM crown in 6th place. So that's the Chevys there on this field. The Chevrolets are doing a great job, and I must say it is a bit weird to see Ford against the Chevrolet here in Supercars, because for the longest time it was Ford versus Holden. Sure, you saw a couple of Volvos every now and then, a couple of other manufacturers, but it was really two tribes go to war, and it was Ford versus Holden. Those were the two ones. And now with Holden out of the Supercars, you see Chevys instead. It's something we're gonna certainly have to get ourselves used to all over again.
Yeah, it does breed some very exciting conversation for sure. American manufacturer versus another American manufacturer running across the pond here in Australia. But it's been a great show up until this point. Like you said, Robert Northway is the leading Chevrolet car, but Sebastian Jackson has gained 9 positions on the good tonight, running in 7th position right now. Started way down the order in 16th and working their way forward has been phenomenal. Here is the image of Northway and his iconic NASCAR livery, and it's just the color scheme that he's decided to pick. It is a white livery as well, but he's got the yellow, the red, and the blue stripes running across the side that are just so iconic for kind of the 1990s NASCAR theme that you typically see, and it's just instantly recognizable and brings you back to some good memories, that's for sure.
It does, and just such a good-looking car as well for Robert Northway, and he's piloting it well, doing it justice definitely up here in 6th place. Has a bit of a breathing space for himself, a great gap he's found himself in, 3 seconds behind Stevens and 15 seconds now ahead of Sebastian Jackson, who you mentioned, up 9 places from where he started. So the Canadian driver with number 87 on his car, and whenever I see Canada and number 87, I just think of automatically of Sidney Crosby. So I wonder if that is a reference or if it's just a number he picked independently. Of course, Sidney Crosby picking number 87 from his birth year, so it's not all that unique, but it's still name and number combination that it's kind of like the ice hockey version of number 46 and Valentino Rossi, or number 3 and Dale Earnhardt. So it's
100%.
Yeah. So here's David Baker, 10, and he is in 10th place, just 6 tenths behind Gary Thomas. So that's certainly a gap that he has been able to make up in quite a short order.
I'm still interested with 16 to go about the fuel saving that some of these drivers are having to do, and if we will see another pit stop call made from Garen Batten and Edward Shelley, or if they've made their fuel calculations just pitch perfect, because they did pit on lap 49, that first 5 drivers, and on lap 51 for Robert Northway. What a amazing story it would be if Robert Northway is the one to win this race based on a fuel strategy alone. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think all of the drivers, to be honest, in the leading, sorry to burst the bubble, but I think the leading 5, they are good for fuel. It's just that some drivers took a little bit less fuel than they should are really. Just trying to save a little bit of time on that pit stop and making their calculations wrong, maybe trusting that it's going to be a little bit of a shorter race than it ended up being. Sometimes you can make those mistakes, especially in the heat of the moment, especially as they still did that pit stop under green flag conditions, mind you. The pace car only came out after that, even if they knew it was coming. Here is Uldis Puteklis, who did make an extra pit stop, trying to make his way back up through the field, and he is behind Joshua Hampton, 10, so fight for 11th place. The Latvian, currently 12th, was up to 7th for a long time. And speaking of battles, here is Fuligny, 10, getting past Sebastian Jackson. So Mario Fuligny, the Italian driver we saw getting spun out, unfortunately, in turn number 3 from 3rd place, and having to make that extra pit stop, now charging his way through the field, as is David Baker.
David Baker making the overtake here, coming down the Conrad straight. And before we get to the kink, but will it be a snap back for the Ford Mustang on the inside line? It sure is. Getting into the braking zone, the Fusion car from Latvia hits the brakes hard and steadily and manages to close down. A good position regained for Pateklis in 11th position. Now, the car behind still under threat from the next car. Oh my goodness, that was a big wiggle from the car behind. Holy Toledos are out. The number 13th place car of Bival trying to get one done on Hampton now. And this might be a setup from a long way back now. He is going to have the run and the straight line speed coming down the mountain straight into Quarry Bend. Will it be an overtaking opportunity? He looks to the inside line, shakes off the slipstream, lick of the stamp. He is going to send it there and walks right on by at Quarry Bend.
Yeah, I don't think, to be honest, I don't think that was Hampton 10 battling it too hard. Belval has done those moves before into the Quarry Bend. He knows how to send it up the inside, and I don't think Hampton was really driving the same race. I don't think his race at the moment is against Claude Belval or indeed Uldis Puteklis. I think his race is trying to hold on to that 13th and make sure that he doesn't get into any trouble, because he has a nice half a minute caution between himself and Jeff Schmeier then in 14th, so Hampton can breathe a little bit easier at this moment in time. And Belval, meanwhile, will be breathing down the neck of Uldis Puteklis potentially in later portions of this race, as we are now watching Daniel Thomas, who is less than a second away from Trevor Wawrowski, who in turn is almost 7 seconds away from Ed Shelley. So Wawrowski, having already clinched the championship, not quite able to stick to the back of Batten and Shelley, instead having to potentially settle for this third place fight. And it's Thomas and it's Stevens right behind him. So Dan versus Dan, Thomas versus Stevens, maybe a round number 3 or 4 finally commencing here towards the last 14 laps, huh?
Maybe, potentially so. Another ballet of the Dans coming for you here in the closing stages of this event. Never mind the fact that we could see another safety car come out should there be any major incident take place, but I don't think we're going to see that anytime soon. Looking at a beautiful rear wing camera of Daniel Thomas as we approach Griffin's Mount here, and a look at the stamp and the big send into Griffin's Corner, Reed Park and McPhillamy Park coming up next. This will be very close to the wall, almost grazing the mirrors. He's getting so close to the walls here. And now, will he mount up any sort of attack? Daniel J. Thomas, the driver from Wales, looking at Wawrowski out in front, trying to close down the gap. And will he go for an alternate line coming down into the Forest Elbow? It's got to be single file. He's a little too far back, and it will be single file through the Forest Elbow. Closes down the gap, though, significantly as he breaks in a straight line coming through the Forest Bend. A little bit of wiggle on throttle application will slow down his charge, and I don't think he's going to have the running speed that he needs to get through at the kink now. Beautiful sights and sounds here at Mount Panorama as we ride on board with Daniel Thomas. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I don't think he has the opportunity, as you were mentioning, so Thomas just having to stick behind for now. You got the championship leader, and indeed the guy who has clinched the championship ahead of you, who is mandating and demanding a little bit more respect. You often see that in races when you see a guy who was all the way up to the front in standings and in races, and you race against him and you just treat him a little bit differently than you would any other driver, just because of the respect that they have earned throughout the season and throughout the seasons that these drivers have been competing against one another. But still, you want to get past them. It's just such a feather for your cap when you're able to pass the champion in the later portions of the race. So Daniel Thomas will be certainly trying to get that move done here in these last 13 laps. Now, one thing I should also mention, Dan Stevens potentially a threat later on, but right now still 2 seconds behind. So if Dan Thomas wants to get that move done, he's gonna really have to get a hurry up on. He can't afford to be bogged down here for too long, or else it's gonna be Stevens catching up to them and turning this two-way into a three-way.
A little menage a trois, if you would, and a little bit of shaking and baking going on between the drivers, and they approach the sunset bend now, and it's going to be a hard-fought move from Daniel Thomas on Vavrovsky. Like you said earlier, giving a little bit more respect where it is deserved when you battle with someone that's typically in the lead of the race or in the lead of the championship. You don't want to impede them in any way, shape, or form. And just at the bottom of your screen, we did see Dan Stevens lurking in the rear mirrors of Daniel Thomas, and there he is again, just menacingly. You can hear the Jaws music playing in the background, da-dum, da-dum, as Daniel Stevens charges up the field as well.
Yeah, and you can maybe get some chess hands soon from us commentators, cause it's gonna get mighty exciting. Now, I will mention Stevens was 7/10 faster at the top of the mountain just now, and then losing time here on the straight line. So once again losing time on the Conrod straight, dropping back now. There might be also some timing related issues, but I do believe he's also just slower down the straight, maybe having to fuel save still. So we get Thomas and we get Vavrovsky, and Thomas catching right up here at the bottom of the track, heading back towards another lap with 12 to go here. And now up into the mountain straight. This is the opportunity. He's 2/10 away and catching on the draft. Will he choose the inside? Will he choose the outside? Will he choose the middle? Any opportunity is possible, but he's looking to the inside here, and Vavrovsky is allowing him to do so, trusting his brakes, but they do not deliver, or maybe he doesn't want to deliver, doesn't want to fight that into the corner. You know how much time you lose on the outside there. So it is Daniel Thomas being able to get that move done at this moment in time with 12 to go, getting himself up to the potential podium position and relegating Trevor Vavrovsky all the way down to 4th place. A whopping 1 position lost, but more importantly, perhaps this is now allowing Daniel Thomas to show us his pace, and just look at that car moving around at the top half of the track. It's great to see.
It's one of the things that is really tricky about coming to Mount Panorama is the track is very bumpy here, as well as the mountain conditions and the corners that you have to face. So it is a lot of moving, physically demanding racetrack, to say the least. The drivers have got to be sweating bullets at this point in time, and definitely getting a little bit fatigued. I know I am currently, and I bet the drivers are feeling a little bit even more so after driving the last 2.5 hours currently of running so far, and we still have another 24 minutes of running left to go of this event. Daniel Thomas has unleashed the beast and has pulled out a 1 second gap ahead of Vavrovsky nearly after just 1 lap.
And Sebastian Jackson. Yeah, Sebastian Jackson, unfortunately, he had a network issue and he has disconnected from the field. So the Canadian driver, number 87, well, that's very, very unfortunate. Meanwhile, as you said, unleash the beast, Daniel Thomas, the fastest lap of the race, a 2:08.924 against small gaps. Small gaps indeed, but still able to improve that one. We are now on board with our race leader, Garen Barron, as he is trying to tackle these last 11 laps. You mentioned fatigue. You mentioned that these drivers are getting exhausted. We're getting a bit exhausted here in the commentary booth, but they are getting even more exhausted. Somebody should have really brought a coffee maker. That's really a staple of commentary booths. You need a coffee maker in every commentary booth, and not one of those instant espresso machines that are god-awful. No, I'm talking about a real coffee maker, like one of those brown machines from the 80s in all white, because they still make the best coffee I have ever tasted. And I'm sure people who brew their coffee themselves, who are a little bit of hipster like that, will disagree with me, but I'm just a fan of the old-fashioned things. Anyway, mentioning about fatigue, I think having run some of the endurance races, having run some of the older races, it's not really the fatigue that is your opponent, because sure, you can have some mental lapses when you are fatigued, when you are have been driving, especially such a demanding car around such a demanding track for 2.5 hours. But it's when you relax, when you allow yourself to relax and just let your hair down, if you're lucky enough to still have some, for a little bit, when the problems arise, because you can just make those mistakes so easily. We've seen it over and over again, both in real life and certainly in sim racing.
100%. My hair is already starting to fall out. The kids call me Unk now. I don't know what that means, but I know it's not good when the kids start calling you names.
Well, I speak fluent Zoomer, so I can translate that for you. It means you're getting old. It's short for uncle.
Yeah, I figured as much, but yes, it means I am old AF, as the kids would say these days. Oh, goodness gracious. I would settle for a French press even at this point in time during the race. Daniel Stevens' new fast lap, 2:08.6 now, being set by the driver in 5th position, unleashing the beast himself, Pateklis. I'm going to get this name right eventually. Going for a move through the kink. Holy smokes. Going for that sketchy move. Didn't have enough overlap. Didn't command the real estate that he needed to get the move done. And this is going to be David Baker, I believe. Yes, David Baker in front. Pateklis going for another look up the inside through the final corner. The Chevy Camaro holding on to this lead battle in 8th, 9th, and 10th. Pateklis under threat from Baval from behind currently, and that is going to be the Dog Bear team chasing down the Fusion team, chasing down the car in 8th place. Good team racing, good team orders have been executed here tonight, but we haven't seen teams in the same category, really. They've been scattered throughout, so we've seen some good team battles overall throughout this event so far up until this point, but we haven't seen the Dog Bear cars go side by side at any point in time, so I'm imagining that they've just let each other by when the time comes to it. The Ford Mustangs. Go ahead.
Yeah, someone should tell them that the race winner's cup is filled with honey. Maybe they'll get some move on.
Ooh, I love honey. Fresh, organic, and gluten-free honey. Nothing better. Oh my goodness, this is a move of the century there. Right before Skyline is not the place to make a move, but they're trying it and headed down the hill, entering the Dippa now is where things get a little bit more sketchy as the retort tried to get executed, but Pateklis getting that one done pretty well. And you called that move earlier on, just minus the runoff road is the move executed.
Yeah, well, the move went down to McPhillamy Park, really. The previous corner, and 10 was able to hold on to the Skyline. They were too wide momentarily going through there, but Uldis Putekli suddenly showing that he can battle. And when we tend to go, well, nine to go for the leaders, but we tend to go, it's time to talk about the battles. What do you think has been the greatest battle in this race? Has it been Daniel Thomas versus Dan Stevens there for a long time for the lead? Maybe we saw some great battles between Claude Belval and a lot of drivers. We've seen Uldik Puteklis, who has been in a lot of battles, but I think the greatest battle personally of this race has been the commentator Sagar Bakshi versus the name of Uldis Puteklis so far.
Throwing just a little bit of shade, but that has been the biggest battle of the race so far, for sure. I was actually going to say the driver in 7th place, Robert Northway, and his battle brewing up for quite some time. Here's an incident coming through for Northway here. A little bit of a mistake and then slowing down instantly.
Yeah, I wonder if he had some technical issues there. Yeah, internet issues there, and just disconnecting off the track for Robert Northway. So that's not ideal, and 10 coming back. So I wonder if he had to actually physically move on from his route, or noticing packet loss or something, or maybe a cat walking by the Ethernet wire that hasn't been properly secured. I know that has happened before. I remember that happening in Lotus 79 once. One driver talking about losing the connection there. I believe that was actually Mick Claridge, unless I'm much mistaken. It might have been the 49s then, with Cat walking through the Ethernet wire. But I wonder if that was a similar issue, and then him just having to get up from his sim rig, stop in a relatively safe place, reconnect the wire, or check out his router, and then come back later on, or maybe some issue with his computer. Either way, he's back on track and racing, so that could have gone far worse than it really did. Puteklis and Baker and Belval then battling for the 8th place, 8th, 9th and 10th, with 8 to go in this race, and we get Danny Pro, unfortunately, then stopped on Skyline.
A very unfortunate incident for Denny Pro. Whatever has happened has definitely caused him to stop in not an opportune place. He is on the runoff road, thank goodness, and not stopped on track. Looking at the onboard, his wheel is cocked a little bit to the left, but he has fully applied the brake and has got his car stopped. So maybe unfortunately having some sort of technical issue, and will result that up to being such. Here is the battle back between Belval, and this is going to be David Baker out in P8 and P9 and 10, and this battle is still brewing up to be something. The gap at the lead, though, has definitely changed. It is 2.7 seconds from Batten to Shelley, and Thomas in third, 5 seconds back from there. Vavroski in fourth, Stevens in fifth, Feligny in sixth, Northway in seventh. And I keep on saying that battle between Northway and I can't remember whom the other driver was, that was basically a 30-lap battle, clattered into the door. Was it Belval? It was a green...
I think it was Puteklis.
Was it? Okay.
We saw the door hit early on, and we were talking about that with Puteklis making no mistakes until he made a mistake, and then Northway just trying to chase him up.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about. That battle with Puteklis for sure had to have been the best thing that we've seen, because it lasted nearly 30 laps until the move was finally executed cleanly. And then Northway having a good run of things so far, only up 1 on the night, but he has done a pretty good job with a 1397 iRating. C-class rated driver, has operated very well tonight and hopefully will return. And it looks like that car that was stopped is actually rolling again, so hopefully not rolling out onto the racetrack with it still holding a technical issue.
Yeah, I hope. Well, let's hope Pro is able to get back underway in short order, but definitely wasn't holding the brakes anymore. So that's something we'll keep a side eye on if Pro is able to return the race. Let's hope he is, because when you've done 2.5 hours, almost 3 hours of racing, you want to finish the race. Even if it's down in 19th position, you still want to get that credit of being able to finish the race, especially with a car that's clean. Let's see if we get clean cars after this one, because Belval was looking to the inside, looking for a late braking move, but Baker is able to hold on to the back, and that's Robert Northwayten into the pit lane from the 8th place. So that's gonna elevate Puteklis into 7th, Baker into 8th, and Belval into 9th. So he was actually in 7th place. So that's a disconnection from Robert Northwayten, who earlier on already stopped for one technical issue, and now it's a full-on disconnection. And that's, well, people say sometimes you see people with 1000 iRating on iRacing forums. I'm not throwing a shade by them, on them by any means, but it's usually those guys wondering, asking questions, why we don't have random technical issues, random mechanical issues on iRacing. Like they want, for example, a random engine failure or something, because it happens in real life racing. Well, we do have random mechanical issues. It's called your internet connection and your computer, which can sometimes act up. So I think that we got that one covered.
100%. That's exactly what I chalk these incidents up to, whether it be a disconnect, a wheel failure, a monitor issue, whatever it is. You have to chalk that up to just having a mechanical issue of your car. Yes, it is extremely unfortunate when those circumstances arise. Yes, they are surprises, and there's nothing you can do except for maintain your equipment. But that's exactly what it's like in real life racing. You have to maintain your equipment. You have to check your cords. I've had my dog unplug my my wheel before during the middle of a race, and I've gone straight off into a barrier. Now all my cables are neatly tucked into my sim rig and put away very nicely, so that never happens to me again, unfortunately. My monitor is tucked away, my modem is tucked away, so that no matter what my dog is doing in my house, she will not be the causation of any disconnects. Looking at Baker and Baval in P8 and P9, the gap is just 0.2 of a second separating the two of them. There might be a move going down right now further down the order. It is a move going down the order, and that'll be Baval going the long way around the outside, making that one stick.
You couldn't fit a newspaper between those two cars, and that's a little bit too late on the brakes for Baker. Just baking a little bit too hot and burning up the buns in the oven, as we see in the background as well. I think that's Denny Pro who's gonna back up going. Yes, he has, and just wiggling a little bit, trying to get the tires up to temp, or having a bit of a drifting moment in sympathy. Yeah, that's definitely some mechanical issues for Denny there, still suffering from those. But yeah, that's a very late braking move. First from Belval to get the overtake done, and then I think Baker was trying to catch up to him in the last corner. Meanwhile, we see Trevor Wawrowski losing a position to Stevens. He has lost a position to Stevens in a very, very unusual place after Skyline into the dipper, as you would call it, in land down under, and losing a place. So I will be very curious to see what happened there later on as we potentially roll back the film. Let's see if Wawrowski is able to get a move back done here towards the chase, or if it is indeed Stevens who will be holding on to what is a 4th place right now. Curious about that. Just a brief moment talking about Stevens. He has the fastest lap of the race. He did that 2:08.6. A very fast lap indeed in this stint, and then he has sort of settled back down into 2:10. So that's very curious how he was able to put on that one fast lap and then went back to what I must presume is fuel saving now, since he was able to pull off that one fast lap. And Wawrowski then, his lap 2:12.6. So there has been a mistake from our newly crowned championship winner.
Very interesting to see that Wawrowski put down a 2:12.6 there. And yeah, let's get a replay of what happened coming down into Skyline. Everything is looking okay, but is that a back marker getting in the way? No, it's just a seemingly incident event on his own, clattering into the wall in a huge drift. And is he managed to save it is the question. Wow, what a save!
Okay, that save was great, but I wonder, okay, I have a theory on what happened there. So the back marker, not at fault at all. You can't let somebody buy in that position. Obviously, it's a single lane really going down there. And you saw how close Wawrowski got to the wall, even all by himself, but managed to keep it just out of the concrete. Now, I wonder if he had to brake a little bit extra due to the back marker, just the back marker being a little bit slower than he expected. And he braked a little bit extra. And in that position, when you get down to the dipper, the weight of the car is loaded to the front tires already. So when you have to hit extra braking there, it can snap that rear end around so quickly on you. And when it happens sort of unexpectedly, you have to do an emergency braking. That means that you snap the rear end around, and that's what led to the mistake, as we see Lorenzetti gaining a position and John Long having to come into the pit lane. And you can sort of kind of see why, because the front end of that car is, well, it's kind of like Amelia Earhart missing.
You're not wrong about that. It is definitely missing. That Camaro is not showroom ready in the slightest, and there is a big off from a back marker in 15th position. That'll be Jackson, and Trevor Wawrowski negotiates that one pretty well there. That is the same car.
Yeah, so that's Jackson first of all, just and you can see there how to let somebody through. No, hang on. That's Ed Shelley. That's Ed Shelley, who has dropped down to 5th place from 2nd, just behind a teammate car, and now being led back through. Ed Shelley was slowed down on the main straight, potentially mistaking the last corner, and that has allowed now Stevens up to 3rd and Wawrowski up to 4th. Wow.
Wow. What happened to Edward Shelley from the UK, the number 34, just sitting like a duck? And we were so taken aback by the position of Edward Shelley there on the straightaway that they were just sitting there pretty much like a duck. Let's get a replay of what happened to John Lang here to cause that front end to go missing. Coming down in the skyline, a little kiss of the wall sent him into the curb, and then end to end he goes.
Yeah, that was like, I believe in Italy where they kissed 3 times, but it depends on the region, you know, in greeting, even with relatives, like you kiss, in some regions you kiss twice, in some regions you kiss 3 times. Well, certainly,
yeah.
Maybe getting a little bit confused and kissing the wall 3 times. Maybe wanted to give that a little bit of a greeting, and unfortunately then maybe making a little bit of a faux pas and 1 too many kisses and ending up losing his front bumper. And now here is Ed Shelleyton just sliding all the way through last corner and spinning, and I believe, by the way, that the camera chanked. It has been a hit, and my God, what a place to park! Is he able to get it spun around? Yes, he is, and that's why he was so slow on the main straight, but that car surely has to be carrying some damage. I know, don't call me Shirley, but that has to be carrying some damage here on out. We also get a message in the chat of what happened then from... I think that would have to be, hang on, yeah, New Zealand, so just lost my pedals. And that's Garen Batten in the pit lane.
Garen Batten into pit lane. I hate to say it, but I called it as I saw it. The drivers on that lead lap that were pushing their hearts out, potentially not having enough fuel to make it to the end there. And that'll pass over the lead to Daniel Thomas, Dan Stevens, and Trevor Vavrowski in P3, who's gained 4 on the evening.
Yeah, and that's Robert Nordway who lost his pedals, by the way. He was just cruising behind Stevens and the pedals just let go. So that's a mechanical issue for him. And that means now Daniel Thomas, who is our Welsh driver who was leading for such a long time, is now back in the lead of this race. So maybe the fuel saving has now come to bear fruition. Well, again, you said you called it. I sure hope somebody picks up that phone 10. Maybe it's Dan Thomas, who is now back in the lead with 7 seconds of a gap between himself and Stevens in second place. Now the question is, can he hold on? Was it enough fuel saving? Has he made his calculations correctly? Or will he have to come back into the pit lane and potentially do a splash and dash? Trevor Vavrowski then up in 3rd place after that little bit of an error, a little bit of a misjudgment with the lapped car, having to do an emergency braking, is right up on the tailpipe of Dan Stevens, who is still furiously fuel saving, up in 2nd place. And I'm sure that's a sentence that sounds a little bit paradoxical, perhaps, because you never really fuel save furiously, but both of them have to make sure that there is enough fuel in the tank to make it to the checkered flag of this race. So we're on board with Vavrowski, who was very fast through the chase, looking to the outside in the last corner, and that is Stevens into the pit lane.
Oh my goodness, another pit stop for Daniel Stevens now being called out. We thought that was going to be a pass for position, but Daniel Stevens nipping away at the pit lane line actually makes a good pit lane entry. Well, that will definitely ruin his charge to make it to the end. With just 2 laps to go in this event, things are definitely getting shaken up.
Yeah, they are shaken and they are also stirred. So Edward Shelleyton up in 6th place. Will he be able to then pass Daniel Stevens, who has just made his pit stop? The answer is no. Stevens comes out ahead. Ed Shelley still heading on to turn number 1, and that means Dan Thomas now in the lead and Trevor Vavrowski in 2nd. Garen Batten up in 3rd place after the pit stops cycle has completed between those guys. Excuse me there. And we have 2 laps to go in this race, but yeah, that is quite confusing because Stevens was fuel saving hard and he still had to make that extra stop, so apparently just not fuel saving hard enough.
Yeah, and now the question is Daniel Thomas going to have to make a third pit stop, and will Trevor Vavroski have to follow suit as well? Right now we're looking at Edward Shelley, and now back over to Daniel Thomas, the driver from Wales. We're going to keep an eye on him for a little bit to see if he has to come down pit road. He seemingly was the driver that was fuel saving the most there for a long time, especially if Dan Stevens, who was dropped down all the way into 5th, was fuel saving as much as possible. Daniel Thomas will have to come into pit lane. We can only presume that, unless he is saving as much as we think he is, and he's doing a good job coming down the chase right now, and he's being chased down by Vavroski in second place by 6.5 seconds. He is not pitting. He is staying out. We do have 2 more laps to go. Does he have enough to make it to the checkered flag?
Yeah, just want to go actually. This is the white flag lap. I do believe, yes, it is the white flag lap. And that means Daniel Thomas is on to his last lap. So is Trevor Vavroski up into second place. And yeah, these guys know the tricks of fuel saving. They would have started it already under or behind the safety car, just trying to save as much as you can, turning off the engine potentially on the downhill and just cruising down the hill, not using the engine at all. You can certainly do that, and that can save you so much, even driving behind the safety car. And then you have to continue doing it. And we were wondering if Daniel Thomas was fuel saving too much, losing control of this race early on in the stint. But it is those who laugh last who laugh hardest, and Daniel Thomas only has to complete 1 more lap around this, perhaps the most demanding circuit, certainly in the Southern Hemisphere. And then he will be able to stake his name as a winner in Mount Panorama.
Amazing drive here for Daniel Thomas tonight. He lost the lead to Dan Stevens after some hard-fought battling, but knew the strategy was going to come his way, and he comes down to the final lap and into Forest Elbow for the final time of asking here tonight at Mount Panorama, and he's going to have a cruise down the Conrad Straight into the chase. And the number 60 has done a phenomenal job this evening. You can tell he's done all the hard work by all the tire splatter across that white Ford livery that he is plastering right now, coming through and into the final chicane for the final time of asking. It's Daniel Thomas clattering the curbs, throwing out the sparks, and the champagne will be all his tonight.
It certainly will be. They will be celebrating all over Wales, from Swansea to Cardiff, from Newport to Wrexham, as Daniel Thomas takes the checkered flag and wins here in Major Series Europe. And fastest lap last time around too. He's doing it in style. Trevor Vavroski 10. He is your series champion for 2025. Has to settle for second here, and it's Garen Batten, the Australian, coming home in third, as the lapped car in front of him just pulls a little bit of a celebratory spin in the last corner and maybe catching some attention there. Matteo Foligni from Italy was unlucky in that last stint, eventually finishing in fourth, and Daniel Stevens in his 100th race, he was close to a race win, but so close was so far, finishing fifth, just ahead of Ed Shelley from United Kingdom, who takes home the 6th position. And we are on board with Daniel Stevens, and I do wonder what's going through his head right now, seeing Daniel Thomas, who he was fighting with for so long. Well, he is applauding, he is clapping, he is giving the respect that is due to his fellow competitors, but it's gotta sting not being able to stand on that podium. Uldis Puteklisten, the Latvian in 7, and Claude Belval from the beautiful, beautiful country of Canada in 8. You got David Baker finishing in 9th position, just pulling his car alongside the track, and Gary Thomas is finally the guy who rounds out your top 10.
Then in 11th, we had Hampton and Scheimer in 12th position. Lorenzetti to round things off in 13th. Lang in 14th. Jackson in 15th. Hutchinson in 16th. Schott in 19th. Hogg in 20th. Partridge in 21st. And Verkin in 22nd.
Yeah, and between those guys, you had Wayne Hutchison, as mentioned, in 16th, Håkan Schött in actually 17th, Pro in 18th, and Robert Northway in 19th. So yeah, a lot of guys being able to finish the race, most of them, as a matter of fact, ending up only 3 drivers retired: Michael Hogg, Ray Partridge, and Gensi van de Wacker. Then the Dutch driver, who we mentioned still doesn't have a team. Somebody signed that guy up, just a friendly reminder. But that was the Bathurst 500 here in the Major Series Europe. We are still waiting for interviews for those guys, but let's go through the final race results first and foremost for these guys. We already kind of went through them there, but let's have a slight recap with the appropriate graphics as well. Daniel Thomas, your race winner. Congratulations to him. Just 8.5 seconds ahead of Trevor Wawrowski. You got Garen Batten in third and Matteo Fligny in fourth place. Daniel Stevens in 5th and Ed Shelley in 6th place. Uldis Puteklis, the Latvian, in 7th. Claude Belvol, the Canadian, in 8th. You got David Baker in 9th and Gary Thomas rounding out the top 10.
Coming up in 11th place, we have Joshua Hampton, and then we have Jeff Scheimer in 12th position, Marco Lorenzetti in 13th, John Lang in 14th, Sebastian Jackson in 15th, Wayne Hutchinson in 16th, Hakan Schott in 17th, Denny Pro in 18th, Robert Northway in 19th, due to a disconnect, unfortunately, Michael Hogg in 20th position.
Yes, indeed. And a couple of more drivers, sadly, retired from the race. That's Ray Partridge and Gensi van de Wacken, 10, rounding out your 22 driver field, as we are already with microphones in hand preparing for an interview. We may not have coffee for our interviewees, but we sure have a couple of sodas, refreshing sodas after the race. Maybe a little bit of a tasty treat in form of a slice of apple pie, maybe. And first one to come and enjoy those treats with us is our new series champion, Trevor Wawrowski, being able to clinch the championship with 1 round to go. Congratulations on an amazing season.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been a bit of a slog and whatnot. Had great fights with Garen and Jesper and a lot of these other guys, but no, it's really awesome. Come out here, get a 2nd place, maybe get a little lucky with kind of how the fuel mileage broke out, but yeah, overall super happy. It's been a great year.
Yeah, let's talk about the fuel mileage actually, because that was one of the big talking points towards the end of the race. Now, it may not be the most exciting of prospects to have a race come down to fuel saving. Sometimes people think that, okay, we should have a hard, fought-out race all the way to the end, but did you already know? Because I know you got the championship pedigree and you got that experience and you got all that iRating as well, so you must have known already early on that, okay, if I come to the pit lane now and this is the last opportunity before the pace car comes out, then I'm gonna have to save hard, essentially, in these last 30 laps or so.
Yeah, I was already, I went a lap longer than everybody on the opening green flag stint. The game plan was already to save a little bit, take a little bit off the top, and just to keep the car clean. But when we got that caution, I was looking at how many laps were left, and I'm like, I think I can do this. And I think everybody else maybe realized, for a lot of these guys, I think they realized maybe a touch too late, just even on the pace laps, just that little bit of extra fuel saving can go a long way. But I was super impressed with how Daniel was able to do it. I was able to get in front of him there briefly for a second, but I just, ultimately, I think Daniel Thomas and Daniel Stevens just had faster cars, and it's a lot easier to save fuel when you just carry more momentum. But yeah, no, as soon as the caution came out, I knew it was like this was going to be a mileage race, and I was disappointed to see Northway end up having issues or whatever, because got to be honest, he came out about 4 seconds behind me, cleared a lot of the traffic with an extra, pace lap of fuel, and I was like, that might be the strategy call. So. But yeah, overall, knew it needed to be that way, and I didn't have the pace to get 2nd place straight up, so it worked out well for me.
So, Trevor, you've been one of the mainstays here in the Major Series, certainly. fixture here in Major Series Europe. And next up we have the Japanese Grand Prix coming up on November 16th. Formula cars in Suzuka. Now you have the championship clinched, so will you be fixing yourself up a nice cocktail and grabbing those VIP seats in the stands, or will you be out there on the track competing for one more time this year?
You got to keep going, you know. You gotta keep going after it, you know. Might as well one more race. I mean, it's not like, you know, yes, you know, this year the goal was, you know, to move up that one last spot, and you know, this championship was kind of the last thing I haven't really done here. And yeah, I mean, but I still love it, you know. You don't do 100 starts just to be like, I got what I need, I'm gonna take my trophy and go home. No, you gotta go out there and represent. So no, I'll definitely be on the track. Doubt I'll be in second, but I'll be on the track.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to seeing you there, man. Congratulations on a well-run race, a podium here in Australia, and of course a championship well-deserved. Wawrowski, if you have anything you'd like to say to our viewers, any shout-outs you'd like to give, then feel free to do so.
Hey, you know, shout out to the guys over at GT Dynamics. You know, I joined. You know, I've been with a couple teams this year or whatever, and it's really made a difference. You know, I really feel like I've stepped my game up to another level, and I think I've been able to show that this year. So everybody over there pushing me, working together, getting faster as a group. So shout out to those guys, and shout out to you guys sticking around this whole season and whatnot. It's been fun. I've luckily had the privilege of being able to come in here and talk to you guys a few times over the years. So it's been a blast. Thank you.
Thank you, Trevor Wawrowski. So that was our new series champion and second place finisher. And you're all wondering, where is the winner of this race? Well, Sagar Bakshi has used his detective skills despite being unfamiliar with the Sherlock Holmes series, and is now gonna talk to our race winner.
That race winner would be Daniel Thomas, the driver who finished out in P1. Did a great job of commanding this race. Congratulations on the race win, sir. Tell me a little bit about your race and the fuel saving that came into effect towards that second stint.
Thank you, guys. Yeah, it's really just a race of survival in itself. The supercars at the circuit is just something that very, very easy to make a mistake. You've got to stay locked in and focused through the whole race. Yeah, I think generally like Mattia and Daniel were very close, and Daniel specifically was very, very fast when he got the lead earlier on. I think when the safety car got called, I was quite good on fuel, so I had to jump down. But at the end, when you've got one to green and there's a lot of cars pit in, and you think maybe a chance some people can make the end, I think just from the green flag, I had to be quite committed to saving. Spent a lot of time just rolling down the mountain, maybe making a bit of trade at times. But it was fun to have a load of different strategies, and glad the fuel saving could help in the end.
That's amazing that you have that mentality and the fortitude to be able to pull off that type of strategy. When did you know that you had enough fuel to make it to the end there?
I think probably about halfway through the stint, I was fairly comfortable, so try to pick up the pace a bit. I think Robert was one of the first drivers that could make the end with a pit stop, and Trevor, especially after we've seen how good he's been through the season. Congratulations to Trevor as well on a fantastic championship run, but generally he's quite strong with fuel saving, so I kind of had the feeling that he'd be on the same sort of mindset as me, trying to make the end. So try to pick up the pace, trying to build a gap, and then maybe overshot my fuel numbers a little bit, so had to dial it back towards the end. But yeah, just glad I could make it back.
Excellent. You had a couple of close calls out on the racetrack. Now tell us, and you didn't win just by on pace alone. You won with some hard-fought battles. If you could name one moment of the race that was the highlight of the last 3 hours, what would you pick?
It's difficult to pick one moment. I think just generally fighting with Daniel was very, very good. Yeah, generally had a bit more pace on me, so I could learn from his lines and see who's taking some speed over me, and I think he pulled off a good move as well. So yeah, that was probably one of the highlights.
Awesome. Is there anybody that you'd like to thank or anybody that you'd like to shout out before we let you go, sir?
Yeah, shout out to you guys for running the streams. Thank you very much. Just the major series in general. It's the first season I've run with these guys, and Garen, I think especially for hosting this week, and all the Fusion team kind of welcomed me in with open arms after seeing I was probably left out on my own through midway through the season. So yeah, a couple of guys to thank. They know who they are.
Great. Thank you so much for joining us, Daniel Thomas, and congratulations on the win. Go enjoy some champagne for yourself.
Thank you very much, guys.
And I do believe next up here in the interviews is the man who rounded out our podium today, Garen Batten of Australia. The man known as the Roo, and certainly showcasing your bit of national pride there, Ten, the trademark animal of Australia. And we've seen some Roos jumping around here in Mount Panorama as well. So how was it racing in your home turf in the majors after doing a round around the globe and a half throughout already?
Yeah, I'm pretty knackered. I'm surprising iRacing don't have some kangaroos around the circuit, actually, because they really are there. Look, that race was bloody hard. Daniel, I can't believe the pace that Daniel was able to do and save fuel at the same time. Like, that's insane. And Trevor, I always knew was gonna run long, because fuel saving is, one of the things that he's really good at. And we saw that in the first stint. He went a lap longer than everybody else already. So I knew that I couldn't save and be fast. I don't have that skill, so I just had to push. So that's what I did there after the safety car. I just went for it. Worked all right. Happy with third. Well done to Daniel and Trevor.
Yep, indeed. They did well, but so did you. And again, fuel saving became such a factor towards the end. So what was the strategy for you? Was it essentially just lift off before the kink and then lift off to the chase, or were there other parts of the track? Did you kind of have to save all around, or did you have certain spots where you did it more aggressively?
No, I was hard in it. Don't lift into the chase. I was flat the whole race. I didn't do any fuel saving that whole race at all. I was just into it. And look, if there'd been one more lap of safety car, or it had been one lap later, then I would have come back in, topped off, and tried to run it. But it's not my strength, to be honest. Fuel saving, not really sure why. But I was already fourth or fifth in the line at that point, so I figured, let's just go for it. But yeah, boy, were my tyres shot there at the end. Not that iRacing, shows it, but yeah, it must have been down to the canvas at the end. I haven't looked at what the percentages were, but yeah, they were done.
Yeah, and so difficult to drive around this track. Even with new tires, let alone with tires which are pretty much saying done, dusted, down to the retirement scrap heap. So it's still a battle for second place in the championship heading on to the final round. We have Suzuka in Japan in a whole different kind of machinery. You got open wheels, you got Formula 1 cars in Suzuka for the final round, and that's just in 3 weeks' time. And you're currently holding on to the second place, but it's Daniel Thomas who is your closest competitor in just 40 points away. So how are you looking into that one? Are you already starting to prepare, or is it something that you are taking up to your calendar next?
I haven't done anything for that event yet. And I think after today's race, Daniel will be about 3 points behind me for second, with the points that he's won from today. So, look, I fully expect Daniel to be quicker than me in those cars next time out. The more downforce on a car, the better, typically. So, yeah, let's see. I'd certainly hope to be somewhere there or thereabouts. But, I think Daniel's just going to be awesome in those cars. So, yeah, we'll see. Congrats to Trevor as well for the championship. It was always going to happen. I said to my teammates at one point about lap 39, I said, the only chance I've got for this championship left is if lightning strikes Trevor's house down the next minute and a half, because he only had to get to halfway to secure it. So, look, well done to him. He's just been so consistent at the front all year. It hasn't mattered what tracks, what cars, anything like that. He's just been there. So yeah, well deserved after many years of the major series for him to take a win. And so look, I'm happy with today's result. I'm happy with how the season's going for me. Look, I'll show up for the last round and give it everything I've got, and we'll just see where it all ends up.
Yep, good luck for the final race, and hey, congratulations on a podium here. Must feel great, Garen Batten.
Thanks very much, guys.
So that's Garen Batten finishing third here in the Bathurst 500, and that concludes the European version of the Major Series Bathurst 500. We still have one more race coming up for those guys who are racing in the Americas region. But for this broadcast, it's time to bid adieu and say goodbye, or say bye-bye. Thanks to Major Series for bringing us in for one more season, and certainly for the penultimate round of the series as well as thanks to the team this race. Sagar Bakshi alongside myself, doing the work of 10 men behind the scenes, was Daniel Costello, using cameras provided by Dougie Beard. And make sure to check out our social media and website and merchandise store, links down in the description. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel as well, so you don't miss a moment here at Global Sim Racing channel. The next race in the Major Series, as mentioned, is going to be the Suzuka Grand Prix, 16th of November 2025. 15:45 UTC, or if you're up there in the States, then it's 9:45 in the morning in Eastern Daylight Time. So make sure to tune in to that one as well. You can see other upcoming races on your screen right now. The next show will be the MX5 United Series at Orm Park. That's on Tuesday, 28th of October, 19:30 UTC, 15:30 or 3:30 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Other upcoming races up there on your screen. Until 10, race clean, race hard, and we'll see you out there on the track.
This is iRacing.
Hey, you know that guy who just before the green flag keys up his mic and asks, "Anybody got a setup?" Well, this is him. This is Adam, and hey, Adam needs some help. On the other hand, this guy over here, this is Steve. Steve is a solid racer and he knows his way around the garage. Steve's problem is time. With a job and a family, he can't find enough time to build competitive setups and to race as often as he likes. But as luck would have it, Steve knows a secret. He lets the Majors Garage crew chiefs do the setup work so he can focus on the racing. At majorsgarage.com, Steve can get setups for over 60 cars on the iRacing service. So no matter what series he wants to jump into, he is covered. Somebody, anybody, really should tell Adam. See you at the garage.